Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today we're going to take a look at the saga. I call it a saga because it went on for at least 18 years in the court system for Martin. I'm going to pronounce his name correctly. Tankleff. I'll call him Marty from now on. So, Marty, this is what he would look like when he was arrested for the brutal murder of his parents. He was 17 years old. Those are his parents. This is Seymour Tankleff, and this is Arlene Tankleff. Oh, good, I got the name right now. And this is Marty, looking happy today because he was freed in, I think it was 2008, and has moved on with his life. And so this is a very interesting case because this was a case where he was convicted at 17 years old, basically on a confession within hours of the murder that some people, especially the defense team, believes was coerced by the detective, who doesn't come across overly well in the documentaries. And there was no absolute physical evidence linking him to the murders, which is pretty hard to believe for a 17-year-old who brutally murders, bludgeons and stabs to death, and cuts the throats of his parents, and yet no weapon is found. Other stuff that, is real questionable. Like, is there not a lot? Like, yeah, and so this went through the appeals court for quite a while. And his defense team did come up with alternative suspects who are very interesting, and are based on the original suspect he even gave. The minute he was arrested, or not even arrested, right there at the scene, he says, "I think this is who did it." And he pointed out a guy that worked with his dad who had just been at the house the night before at a poker game till 3 a.m, Steurman. And he said, "It's him. I think he did it. They've been having some bad blood between them, and he owes $500,000 to my dad. And he was there at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they were dead by the time I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning." And so the defense team finally did a lot of investigations. A private investigator, used to be a cop, and came up with a pretty interesting group of people who said they were involved in a hit on this couple. And that they were hired by the guy he said, Steurman, the business partner. And so over the years, finally, this is what happened. I'm going to start at the end, and then I'm going to back up. Okay. So anyway, he was convicted of murdering his parents, Seymour and Arlene Tankleff, in 1988. And that's when it originally went down. Now, after a bunch of appeals that failed, it ended up in the State Attorney General's office. And this is Benjamin E. Rosenberg, Chief Trial Counsel in the New York State Attorney General's office, affirms under penalties of perjury. He's an attorney, and he's submitting this affirmation memorandum in support of an order to dismiss the case. And why does he do this? Now, a lot of you know that I have some issues with things not going back to trial. So this case was up for another trial, and before it got to go finally back to court for another trial, the Attorney General dismissed it. Oh, I forgot to do, before I continue, if you're new to the channel, I got to do this stuff. Otherwise, things go badly. If you'd like to be in the chat room with the wonderful folks here, please click on the link below for Patreon. It's $5 a month, and there are 2 live shows a week, which is a case show like this, and a hangout during the week. And if you don't want to do that, fine. You can subscribe to the channel, please, and then you click the bell, you get notifications. That doesn't cost you anything. But I do appreciate the support from my patrons, and it's nice that you're here for the live show. So I just wanted to say that before I go on, because I forgot. I got excited about this case because it's a very interesting case. And I want to go back just to the chat room and say hello to everybody who I said hello to before the show. Okay, Melanie points out, the detective on the documentary was unprofessional, in my opinion. He did not come across well. Let me tell you, he did not. He was like very unlikable, shall we say. At the most, you could say that. Okay, though, this book you're talking about, It's actually done with J. Salpeter, which is the guy that was investigating the case. And Richard Steurman is, I think, is a kind of non-ghostwriter, shall we say. I will show you that right now. I watched, if you're going to want to watch more about the show than what I tell you, on YouTube, you get the one on the bottom is the well-known one. It's 48 Hours Fight for the Truth. So this is all about how Marty was wrongfully convicted at 17 years old, and that there was better suspects than him, and that the detective was horrible and basically railroaded him. So that's what that show is about. It is a very, very much a pro-defense show. Just to say, it's not meaning they're wrong. I'm just pointing out that's what they are. The one on top, Martin Tankleff, A Question of Guilt. This is a judge named Stuart Nam. He was a judge. Now, I like this show. It was much more even-keeled. Definitely still very pro-defense, but very even-keeled. I like the presentation far better. That's my opinion on that. But then I went and read this one you're talking about, A Criminal Injustice. This is really a J. Salpeter. This is his book. This is the guy that found the suspects, the alternative suspects that he believes were hired they were hired to kill the couple, and this Marty was just sleeping in the back room in a very, very large house at the time, and his parents got killed, and then he got blamed for it, and he went away for 18 years. So this book, I read the book Criminal Injustice because I wanted to definitely get the opinion of the guy the private detective who investigated the case for Marty. And I'm going to tell you some very interesting things about that guy later too. We got a lot of squirrely characters in this whole saga. That's why I call it a saga. So at any rate, I want to continue just about what happened with him getting out. Just important to know that he got out and he's happy. I mean, he's just happy he's out. He's very happy. And this is the way he looked when he, on the left, when he got nailed with the guilt, found him guilty at 17 years old. And this is how he looks today, much, much happier. All right. So anyway, the Attorney General says this. I am bothered by this not going back to the court. Why? Because in this country, we're supposed to have a jury system, which you all know I'm opposed to the civilian jury system. I would like to be a professional jury system. However, if you're going to go on and on about how the civilian jury system is the cat's meow and everybody should be in front of a civilian jury, they should be making the determinations, not people from the government. And yet today what we have is a whole bunch of governmental people, a whole bunch of politicians making decisions behind the backs of everybody, and basically saying whatever decision the jury made originally they don't think it's worthwhile anymore. So they dump it and then they make a decision on their own, not even allowing to go back to trial again. So this was supposed to go to trial. But the Attorney General said this: after extensive review, the Attorney General has determined, I guess by his little self, that although there is some evidence that defendant Martin Tankleff committed the crimes charged. Interesting, he says some evidence. Now I'm going to get into some of this evidence. It's really a difficult case. Some of the evidence is interesting. What does it mean is another issue. So I know I'll get into all the different possibilities. Although there is some evidence that the defendant Martin Tankleff committed the crimes charged, after 20 years, the evidence is insufficient to conclude or to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did so. So 20 years ago, the jury found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But now this Attorney General is saying he feels that if it goes to court again, the new jury, he's making up the minds of the of the jury who don't even get a chance to look at the evidence, that they're going to. I guess he's kind of like, a psychic or something. I know they're not going to find him. They're going to have issues with the evidence. So it's not going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So they're going to find him not guilty. So why waste the money? Why waste the state's money? And by the way, this often happens before any case even goes to the first trial. Because this is what happens. The prosecutor's office, let's say the police think they got their guy. They go to the prosecutor's office and say, look at this is all the evidence we have. And the prosecutor's like, well, I agree with you. I think you did it. But I don't want to lose the case. I think it's a little bit shaky, so I think they might find reasonable doubt, so I'm not taking it to trial. So even then, the prosecutor decides what he thinks the jury is going to think, and that he's going to go to trial or not based on what he thinks the jury is going to think. It's very interesting. So anyway, he thinks, this new judge, that they're going to go, first of all, I'm not saying he's wrong. I tend to agree with him. That especially at this point in time, 20 years later, you got a kid who's he was a kid when he went to jail. 20 years has gone by. Well, actually, at that time, I guess it was that. I think it was 18. But anyway, so many years has gone by. When people look at this guy many years later, and they're not in the throes of what just happened, it's very hard to reconvict somebody if it's not really super solid case. And people have things have disappeared. All kinds of stuff has happened over the years that can taint the case. So do I get the point why he didn't want to take it back to trial? Yeah. Do I think he would have been found probably not guilty? Yeah, I do. Doesn't mean I think he didn't do it, but doesn't mean I think he did do it. So I'm going to get into all the evidence in a bit, but I kind of agree with the reasoning here. But it does sort of bother me that, again, if one person can come back years later and just say, we're going to just nullify what the jury decided. But there is an appeal system, but he's not even, it's complicated. Anyway, he says, the issue in this case is not whether there is evidence that Tankleff committed the crime charged, but whether there's sufficient evidence to proceed in good faith with the case and ultimately convince a jury of the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. All right. And that is true. It says also here, Tankleff was convicted in 1990 for the brutal murder of his parents, Seymour and Arlene Tankleff, in their home in Belle Terre. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, so don't jump on me. Long Island. At trial, the central piece of evidence was a confession that Tankleff, then 17, made to the police on the day of the murders. He just, the next day, he said, I didn't mean that. In the 18 years since that conviction, Tankleff has vigorously maintained his innocence. That's true, claiming the confession was coerced. His legal and investigative team have presented in legal proceedings an alternative theory about who committed the murders. The courts have rejected various challenges to the convictions. So it goes on and on and on and on and on. So the district attorney announced he would dismiss the charges against Tankleff and seek a special prosecutor to investigate the defense's alternative theory, which the district attorney had publicly stated he did not believe. Before the district attorney filed his motion, however, the governor assigned the attorney general a special prosecutor to investigate the murders. Okay, so that's where the attorney general then gets a team of lawyers. So in other words, in a lot of these cases, it seems like the state, I think due to politics, a good portion of time, takes on the defense. They become the defense team, which is kind of interesting. So anyway, they decided, they reviewed everything, interviewed people. They seemed like they did do a pretty good job of. I'll say that at least. It seemed like they did a lot of work, this team, and they came to the conclusion that maybe he didn't do it, maybe he did, but it wouldn't be worth proving in court. So it says here, the result of this investigation yielded the following evidence supporting a case against Tankleff. His parents were found dead or fatally wounded in their house in early morning, September 7th, 1988. There was no sign of a break-in, which I can give an explanation for. So I'll get to the evidence in a minute, but I just want to tell you what their versions are here. There was no sign of a break-in, which is interesting, which is why he became a suspect right away. So only one, his parents are both brutally murdered, and he's like sleeping in his bed and no break-in. That is noticeable. There are two doors that are open, however. No sign of a break-in or of a robbery. All the stuff was still there. Jewelry, everything. They were wealthy. I'll go back to the history of the Tankleff family in a minute. The defendant was the beneficiary of his parents' wills, which was like about $3 million. Apparently, he got like 80% of his parents' money if they died, and his older sister, got 10%. she a little pissed off. She was in the documentary too. Her name is Sherry Rother. Anyway, she didn't come across well either. So both the detective came across like crap, and she came across like crap. He was the first person. She was the first person he called after a 911 call, and he said, "Come over right away," And she believed he was innocent. Then she thought he was guilty. Then she thought he was innocent. Then she thought he was guilty. Then she thought he was innocent. But she doesn't seem to like him terribly well, because he got 80% and she got 10%. But if the parents are dead and he gets convicted, she has never been a suspect. Just saying, she's never been a suspect. I'm not quite sure why, because you're talking about motive. She has some. Anyway, if he got rid of his parents, he was a beneficiary of parents' wills, and just days before the murders, he had made references to friends of the benefits he would enjoy if his parents were to die. I just want to say, folks, probably not a good thing to say. If my parents weren't around, I'd be able to do what I wanted. If my parents were dead, and then your parents are dead. It's one of those things. I wish, if my ex-husband got hit by a truck and then he gets hit by a truck, just be careful what you say, because it might happen and you might go down for it. The defendant made vague but incriminatory statements to a family member and direct confession to some fellow inmates in prison. I didn't know that. He gave a confession to the police, which he later disavowed, not them. He disavowed. But they said the jury what they would hear today would be changes in the law that would preclude prosecution of the defendant on the limited evidence, passage of time. In other words, today he probably would have already been out of prison. The forensic testing wasn't good at the time. Absence of biological physical evidence compounded, there was not anything that linked him physically to the crime. And then there was some new stuff supposedly found, an unnoticed bloody imprint found on a sheet of Arlene's bed that appeared to be from a knife that didn't match the supposed knife that was identified as the murder weapon. It's things that weaken the case. All right. Therefore, he dismissed the case. All right. Having said that, so he's been exonerated. He looks so young there. He's been exonerated. And the Innocence Project had their involvement in all that stuff, and all the huge amount of people. He has been exonerated. Found they did not take the case back to court. So therefore, he is no longer considered guilty of the crime. That doesn't, I just want to point it out, doesn't mean he's innocent. It just means he wasn't proven guilty of the crime. Well, he was during the trial, but now that has been, the process has gone through, they've nullified the jury's verdict. So now, since he's not going back to court, he's being found not guilty at this point in time, regardless of whether there is any evidence or not against him. So he's a free man, and his whole family is extraordinarily excited about that. The whole family by aunts, uncles, cousins, and all that stuff. Only a sister is a holdout. So he is, by the way, he's gone on to become an attorney. He's an attorney now. He got $10 million in a lawsuit against the state. So he's rich as crap, richer than if he got the $3 million. But of course, he did spend, 18 years in prison. So kind of a lot of time in prison. So, but he's free and not considered. He's being exonerated. But I just want to point out that doesn't mean necessarily he's innocent. So that's what I'm going to examine now. What is the evidence in this case that leans toward his guilt or leans away from his guilt? Because there are some other interesting suspects, which at the time were never heavily investigated. Because the McCready, who is the guy that was handling the case, where's McCready? Yo, McCready, where are you? Oh, McCready, here he is. This is McCready. That was the lead detective, and that's the one that does not come off well, let me say. He's a hard-nosed, arrogant fellow, and a lot of people do not like him. So I will now go to the story of how he ended up getting this. And by the way, I want to point out that on the 48 Hours episode, there were 2,000 comments approximately, and only 2 people out of 2,000 thought he was guilty. That is probably the highest rate I've ever seen of any group of people. You know, when you have somebody who's gotten out of prison, I've never seen that many people like definitely pro he's innocent, and only 2 people. Although Benny has rolled in. Benny's not here right now, I don't think. Benny, are you here? Benny has come in and he has said he thinks he's guilty. And who else said he thought he was guilty? We have a few other people here who think he's guilty. But overall, pretty much everybody thinks he's innocent. So, Sarah's pointing out that he needed a new nose. He did get it. He did get his, when the police came the day his parents were murdered, he had blood like in his eyes, and they're like, because they're looking at him thinking, well, you know, did somebody punch him out or what in this attempt? And he said, no, I just had my nose fixed. And he did. On his 17th birthday, he got a present from his parents to fix his nose. I'm trying to decide whether that was before or after his nose was fixed, because if that was, is that after his nose was fixed? Damn. I'm not sure that was. I don't know what the nose job really solved. Now, supposedly it was not just for some issues with, you know, breathing. Supposedly it was a vanity thing, but maybe need a new plastic surgeon on that one. But it was true. He did have his nose worked on. So the blood in his eyes was not necessarily from the crime. So that was true. Oh, you said me? Amy's taking, she says guilty. Oh my God. Not money well spent. Yeah. Christoph says 10 million for 18 years in prison, bad deal for 6 months. You know, I'll point this out, which is interesting. Yeah, 10 million for 18 years. That's like 500,000 a year for ruining your damn life. I mean, I'll never make 500,000 a year. I've never made 100,000 a year. So, you know, 500,000 a year is pretty good, but I don't know. I want to give up 18 years of my life, especially at his age, when he could be out having a grand old time. You want to spend the next 18 years in prison. So 10 million, I'm okay with that. But one of the things people don't seem to understand too is that 10 million is taxpayer money that could go to other things. If the guy's innocent, absolutely innocent, then we have to hold our government responsible for putting an innocent man in prison. And maybe we do need to give up our taxpayer money for that. But an awful lot of these guys are, not saying this one, are guilty and still get the $10 million payout. And we're paying for guilty guys to get out of prison and give them a whole crap load of money to enjoy. A little concerning. But I want to point out what he said. This is something that was said, and this is interesting to me. This is just a notation of how things work. When he got out, he's just happy he got out. One thing I have noticed, which is across the board almost, is that when innocent people get out of prison after they finally proven that they're absolutely innocent, they are bitter as hell. Bitter, bitter, bitter. Full of anger, full of despising the entire system, everybody in it. They are so freaking angry because they were innocent and they got convicted by this crooked system. And they are very, very bitter. I have noted that a lot of the guys I've found guilty in the past, not this one, again, I haven't even gone to the case yet, people who are guilty in the past, where I've seen people who I know are guilty, who the Innocence Project has gotten out of, they usually say, I don't hold any bitterness. And I'm like, why? Why are these guys who've been put in prison for 40, 50 years not feeling bitter toward the system? Probably because they're guilty. They got no reason to be bitter. What they are is excited that they're getting out now and getting a shitload of money. He's not bitter, which is interesting. I'm not saying it means something, but I'm going to point out a lot of interesting things. How it stacks up is another question. Another thing that they settled about him is that One of the reasons he got convicted was because he didn't show a lot of emotion at the scene. Didn't cry, didn't seem to be overly concerned, like, how's my dad doing? How's my dad doing? He didn't ask questions. He was very bland, had low affect. They say to this day that is the way he's always been. Always had a low affect, just not much affect. He doesn't, not really super expressive. He looks pretty happy here, but that's what a lot of his family says about him. Now, some people will go to Brian Koberger, they'll say he's autistic. That's why he acts that way. But also the other people that act that way are psychopaths. Psychopaths often show very little emotion, except for themselves, but very little emotion in general. So that's interesting. So is it just a characteristic that has nothing to do with personality disorder, or has he always had a personality disorder that his family doesn't recognize? So I don't know. So, all right, let's go to the case. I know some of you are like, when is she going to get to it? I get those comments. So anyway, let's look at who he is. I think it's important to just understand him. There's another very interesting thing about this case, and that he was an adopted child. Now, there is a theory. Let me find it here. Where's my theory on that? Okay, let me see if I've lost that. They had a witness that came in, and they did the adopted child theory. Adopted child theory. I'm putting this back in because I've lost it. Oh, it's somewhere. Oh, syndrome. Okay, maybe it's a syndrome. Okay. Adopted child syndrome is not a formally recognized diagnosis, but it is a term used to describe a range of behavioral and emotional issues that some adoptive children may experience. These issues can include attachment difficulties, in other words, attachment disorder, behavioral problems, and difficulty with emotional regulation. And there is a point, which is actually, I think, statistically true, that many serial killers and other murderers, there's a higher level of adopted kids than biological kids. And the question is, why is that? And it has to do with attachment disorder, and why attachment disorder would occur is a question. Now, some it's pretty obvious, and I do have one also. I have one adopted child I adopted at 5 years old. He was in a foster system for 5 years, and when you're in a foster system, or an orphanages or whatever, a lot of times you're not getting the kind of attention you need from mothers and from family. It's an odd situation. And so a lot of times children develop attachment disorders, and therefore when they get to a certain age, they don't relate and connect. Luckily for my son, he is now 40 years old, and he's a good kid. I'm a good kid. He's a 40-year-old man, but he lives down the street. And then my 3 kids all live in the area, and we all have good relationships, and everything's good. But when I adopted him, things were difficult because I saw the attachment issue problem that he suffered from because he didn't trust anybody. So there are kids who come out of these systems, and some of them don't suffer much from it. Some of them have issues like my son, but then because they get the family they need, they then become fine citizens and have a good life. And then there's some who just don't seem to do well, that the attachment disorder issue affects them. And it can affect biological children just as well, but just biological children have a theoretical leg up in the sense that if their family's still together and they're in that family, they're more connected. Whereas sometimes adopted children, say they go through foster systems, and there's a high rate of like the adopted kids from Russia. There's a big problem where people are adopting kids out of Russia, and they were like, my God, the kid's trying to kill us, trying to kill its siblings, trying to kill the dog, They're like, what the hell? And so, because that kid's already a psychopath by the time you got it. So there is that problem. That does exist. However, in Marty's case, he was a very lucky adopted child. He was adopted as an infant, like the day he was born. And his mommy was in the chair holding him like she was the proudest mommy in the world, like she had just birthed that child. But for her, that child came into her life right then and there. And having adopted a child, I feel that way. The moment my adopted child came into my life, he was my son. And biology meant nothing to me. For Arlene, I think she thought the exact same way. She had about it. I can't figure out whether the bad experience came before him or after, but she tried to adopt another child, and she had there was a little girl, and that child was taken back by the biological parent. The system screwed her, and her heart was broken. And I had that also same experience. I had a foster daughter for half a year, and she was going to be part of our family forever. And then the foster system came and took her away. And that was absolutely heartbreaking. And I didn't trust the system after that. And when I was adopting my son, I'm like, you better terminate those parental rights before he even enters my house, because I'm not going through that. And she went through that, and she lost the daughter that she thought was hers. So then when Marty's there, she was like, he's mine, he's mine, he's mine, he's my son. And he said he had a very good relationship with his mom and a very good relationship with his dad. Let me just show you a couple of pictures of them. This is him with his mom. And this is him when he was a child with his dad. And here they are together. It's a family. He was their prize son. So I don't think he's an adopted kid was a huge problem, in the sense that he was always with them. So he didn't have the attachment disorder thing going on. And they seemed to adore the living crap out of him. So that also didn't, sometimes what'll happen with the people bringing some adopted kids is when that kid turns kind of annoying or starts behaving badly, they go, it's because you're adopted, even though their biological kid is a shitbird too. It's like, but sometimes they'll do that. And that's a horrible thing, is when you blame the kid, you basically blame the kid's failures on being adopted because you're not really ours. Then the kid can get real psychological problems. Now the older sister, now him, Seymour, apparently he was married, they had the girl, his older sister was like way older than him. And then I forgot the wife died or they divorced, but anyway, he hooked up with a secretary at his office, and then they got married, but they couldn't have kids. So that's when he got adopted. Well, the older sister, I think, was a bit annoyed because she'd grown up in kind of a more middle class kind of, struggle. And then she ended up losing her mom to whatever. And then this new woman came in, and apparently they didn't get along. And then it was all about Marty. So I guess the older sister was a little bit peeved, shall we say. And the guy apparently is in a closest relationship, since older sister's getting 10% and he's getting 80%. What the hell? I mean, don't do that to your kids, by the way. You better chop it up equally. What they do with the money and whether they're worthy of it, whatever, unless they're totally horrible people and you don't want to have anything, in which case just cut them out. But don't give somebody this a little bit and then the other person this. This kind of sucks. So the older sister was already married and had kids when he was born. So, but he grew up in the lap of luxury. I mean, he had got everything. And they bought this house out in, I think, Belle Terre. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I really don't. And it's in Long Island, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And they live at 33 Seaside Drive. And this is the house. It's a big house. Now, it was a one-level house, which is kind of unique, and it was more popular back in the day. But a very, very big house, and had a swimming pool behind it, which keep that in mind. And it's right there on the beach. Now, this becomes important. The beach becomes important because they never found the weapons, which was something that bludgeoned his parents and something that stabbed his parents. He, in his confession, said it was a barbell, or at least the bar from the whatever. If you're a weightlifter, you get these things down better than me. And a knife from the kitchen, there was one lying next to the watermelon, which supposedly could have been the weapon. Never found. And they did test the barbells and the weapon, the knives, and came up with 0 DNA, 0 blood, anything. So either he claimed he went and washed everything in the shower. After he killed them, he went and washed everything in the shower. Now, sometimes that'll work. So I just want to point that out. People don't ever understand that sometimes water does Really good job. They think if that would never have worked, and therefore, no matter how much you wash the crap out of it or bleached or whatever, there will be some evidence. And a lot of times there isn't. So that he's telling the truth that he used those items and that just turned out they couldn't find blood on them. It could be true. But the only reason I point out the location of the beach is because at some point after the detective in charge, McCready, told, where is it? Do I have it here? Yeah. Asked Hines to go down to the beach behind the house to see if he could find anything. Now, this was interesting because there may be a time issue here, because if he was guilty and killed his parents earlier than is claimed it could have happened or may have happened, then he might have had a couple hours to work with. He could have gone down to the beach. It was a Long Island Sound. Now, again, if you're from Long Island and you know Long Island Sound, I don't know the issues of, first of all, if you throw a heavy object in there, probably just going to sink. A knife might float away. I don't know. What the hell was that weird sound? Thing just blew up here. That was weird. So here is the house, though. As you can see, that's a hell of a drop. And I can't really figure this part out. So there's a hell of a drop there. So let's say he killed his parents and then he trying to wash up these things. Well, first of all, I don't know if they ever checked the pool, because a pool was there too. So theoretically, he could have jumped in the pool, not in the shower. Just pointing out, I'll get to the evidence in a minute in order, but he supposedly killed his parents with a barbell or some kind of, at least the bar of something, and a knife. And then he said he went in the shower and washed everything off. But I don't know about the pool. I can't find anything about, did they check the pool? Because if you want to clean your clothes and the barbell and a knife, the pool is not a bad choice. But I don't know if they ever checked the filters and stuff. I don't know. But there's a pool behind the house. And then there's the beach and the water. I did try to figure this part out. Right? See, this is the pool from the house. But if you see, in spite of how steep it is, it looks like those are actually stairs going down to the beach. And since the detective asked the person to go down to the beach, why would he say that if there was no access to the beach? So there seems to be access to the beach. They didn't find anything on the beach, but I don't know where they looked, how far they looked. Because, I mean, just because they didn't find anything there doesn't mean if you've got an hour to spare, you can't run down the beach for a mile and get rid of the shit and come back. So keep that in mind. I find that interesting. All right, so that's where he lived. This is the front of the house. All right, so now, what happened on that day? All right. So I'm going to get into the house layout. I'm going to get into how it was described, the crime went down, and then I'll get into the house layout. Let's see what some of you have to say. It's interesting. Frida says, hi, Frida. Believe even minimal maternal separation is alleged to have harmful effects. It very much can. It's just that there's a thing called trust. When you come into this world, you have to trust the people that are caring for you, because you have, quite frankly, not much to work with as a baby. If they don't feed you, they don't feed you. If they don't hold you, they don't hold you. If you're crying and they don't help you and pick you up and pat your back, you're going to be crying. If they throw you, if they whack you, there's nothing you can do about it. If they leave you in a crib which just happened in Russia, they just leave these little orphan kids in the crib for like hours on end without any kind of person touching them. It is pretty much equivalent to being a prisoner of war, but you're only a baby, and so the damage it does. And then if you're in foster care that doesn't work really well, and you're thrown around from foster care, and you have a biological parent who shows up or doesn't show up, the emotional trauma is staggering. I'm not fond of it. and for that reason, I kind of almost wish that we go back to the days where a kid was like, if somebody left a baby on a doorstep, somebody adopted them like ASAP rather than leave them in situations for years on end, which were unstable. So, but I could go on forever on that because I've experienced it. This isn't a theory that's universally accepted. Yeah, it's not if you're talking about the adopted child syndrome, it's not hugely accepted. This is true. That's true. That's interesting. It's been studied with mothers separated from infants who've been kept in intensive care. Yeah, I don't know. It depends how. There's so many. The thing is, there's so many variables. You could have a child who's been in intensive care, but the parents are intensively involved, and then when the child gets out, they're right there. Then you can have parents who are they might have personality disorders of their own. The child gets out and they're like, yeah, you're finally out. It's like, I kind of like those 3 months I didn't have to actually take care of you. That can be a biological parent. So it's these things are very difficult to, Sarah, no, this is what I think is the best. No, this is what I think he got the best deal possible. I think you got the best deal possible. The two, having your child right away, giving him that home, which I know you are, that child isn't suffering all those things. That child is loved. That child is cared for. That child isn't in fear because that child has a safe place right away. So that's what I'm for. I'm actually for. I actually think he had a great deal, as does your son. So the question is, if he had such a great deal, could he still be a psychopath? And that's a good question, because psychopathy can develop for many reasons, and we don't understand them. Whether it's something you come into the world with a personality disorder, and then your environment it mixes together and makes you into a psychopath. I don't know. His parents did give him everything, but there were also issues between the parents that he was dealing with. They started fighting. They separated for a while. They got back together. There was a theory that they were about to separate again. Mommy was overprotecting, didn't want him to go and do sports. Daddy had his things. They were like, he was like glued to them, almost to the point of abnormal. Like he was always with them, and he didn't date when he was in high school. And there are things that I don't know, because I don't know all the full picture, whether he looked like a healthy human being, like some think, or whether he had issues, which were undiscovered until maybe he killed his parents. If he killed his parents, that he was actually a psychopath, but nobody really recognized it. And he was a good manipulator. I don't know. And I can't go there, so I just have to go with the evidence of the crime scene. So I want to point this out. I'm going to get to this. If he wanted his father dead, why didn't he make sure he was dead? This is one of the main reasons people think he was innocent. Okay? Because at the scene, when he called 911, and I'll tell you, I'll just go ahead and show you what 911 was. So he wakes up. Maybe I should just tell you the whole story about when he wakes up. Okay? So let me go to, I know that some people say, my God, it's hard to follow you because you jump around. True. Okay. But that's my style. And sorry about that. But what happened on the day? Okay, I'm going to go now to, and it's very hard to find, by the way, people of state of New York against Martin Tankleff. This is the prosecutor's case. And it was hard to find. It really was. So here is the case. Hold on a second. Let me find it's a lot of pages, but I want to get to the events leading up to the murders. All right. Okay, so you're getting ready for this. Okay, these are events leading up to the murders. You have to know the events leading up, and then you can understand what you're talking about. That's why if he wanted his father dead, did he make a 911 call when his father was still alive? That's a good question. In the early 1980s, Jerard Steurman, remember the Jerard Steurman, the friend of the business partner. Where's Jerry? There's Jerry. He's looking sad. Okay. And Marty said right away when he found his parents dead and he called the police and they showed up, he said he thought Jerard Steurman was involved in the death of his parents. He thought he had something to do with it. Jerard Steurman opened and owned bagel stores on Long Island. Oh, I want to point out one other thing, just for the sake of pointing this out, because I go out of order all the time. So anyway, he was raised Jewish, His parents are Jews. He was raised Jewish. He's got a, he went to his bar mitzvah, not bat mitzvah. That's female. Bar mitzvah. I only had one high side of my family that was Jewish, and they never practiced, so I learned nothing. But anyway, so when they raised him Jewish. And there's these people, and I've seen this, and it drives me nuts. That's why I have to say it. That they will get a kid out of from India, and the kid is in a Hindu orphanage, and the parents are Hindu. So the American people bring this child to their home, to America, and then they raise the child in the Hindu religion, even though they're Christian or Buddhist or Jewish or Muslim. No, not probably Muslims don't do that. But anyway, they're trying to be open. So they'll raise the kid as a Hindu. They'll raise the rest of the kids as Christians or Jews or whatever, or as nothing. But they'll say, well, the baby was born to Hindu parents, so therefore we have to raise a child as a Hindu. It was a baby. The baby doesn't know anything. The baby's in your family. You raise a child as your family. You don't raise a child just because he was born in another country to some people who had a particular religion. It's ridiculous. It's a baby. You're not respecting any damn thing. It's just stupid. And you're actually putting a separation. Now, if you Hindu yourself and the kid comes to you and you're, okay, well, we're all Hindu. That works out fine. But I'm going to say if Hindu parents in the United States, if they're Indians or, came to the United States and they adopted a child out of a Christian orphanage in India, should they raise a child Christian or should they raise a child Hindu? Well, I'm going to say your family's Hindu. Raise a child Hindu. I just think it's so crazy. But anyway, so they raised him Jewish, which they should because they're Jews. Just saying. So that was good. They included him in their family as not a different kind of thing. That's my point on this. This causes, again, an attachment disorder issue. Sometimes kids who come to the family, they're treated as though their biology or their birth location is more meaningful than their family that they have now. So if they brought a child from China, for example, they raise their child as if they're Chinese. They're not Chinese. They're Americans. They're not Chinese. If they're Chinese, they'd be living in China. They're Americans. You don't treat them as they're Chinese. The rest of the kids in the family aren't Chinese, but that kid is, just because what? He looks a certain way, was born a certain place. It's absolute nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. I saw this show with this guy is black, and he was born in China to some Nigerian parents who moved to China and were teaching in China, working in China. And he was born in China. His parents were effectively Nigerian Chinese, but he was Chinese through and through. And he spoke Chinese like, guess what? A person who lives in China and is a Chinese. And people kept calling him Nigerian. I'm like, the guy's not Nigerian. The guy is Chinese. Just because his skin is dark and his parents are from Nigeria, that guy's still Chinese. So, because he's growing up in China. Now his family can, because they come from Nigeria, can help him understand his history. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because his parents actually literally are from Nigeria. So if they want to teach him something about the country that his parents come from, that's fine. My father came from Germany. I learned a little bit about Germany, but I was never a German. I was always an American. My father was a German American. Well, because he came from Germany when he was a teenager. So I learned a lot about Germany, but I wasn't I ate some German food, but I wasn't German. And that guy is not Nigerian. He's Chinese. So he brought into this family on the first day. He's Jewish. He's a Tankleff through and through. I don't know. I digress, but that's me. Anyway, so Jerry Steurman, that's this guy who was a business partner of Seymour Tankleff, which is his dad. All right. Jerry Steurman owned and operated bagel stores on Long Island. Seymour Tankleff was one of his customers, and in and about 1983, they became friends. In 1985 and 1986, Steurman was having a house built in Belle Terre, and to help finance the construction, he borrowed $350,000 from Seymour. Seymour was a wheeler dealer. He was. And he was also basically, he lent a lot of money to people. And let me tell you, his interest rate was really high. Steurman testified that as collateral for the loans, he gave Seymour a 50% interest in 2 bagel stores, and that pursuant to written agreements containing provisions that would survive Seymour's death, Steurman repaid the loans in weekly installments, with the repayment starting at $1,000 and graduating to $2,500. They also owned some racehorses together. Every Saturday night, he and the Tankleffs, including Marty, would go to the racetrack for dinner. According to Steurman, he and Seymour became very close, and Seymour was like a father to me. Toward the end of 1986, he accepted Seymour's invitation to join the After Dinner Club, an informal association whose members play poker every Tuesday evening. Now, here's where it comes. So they had some, I'm going to skip a whole bunch of things about the issues. They were having issues over the money issues, and he was getting, and Steurman was getting aggravated with him because he was like, he was very, very, call it, he'd be your friend, but he'd also stomp on you, So anyway, they had to decline in their relationship. However, let me go to the night of it. Okay, the eve of the murders. All right, so now, the eve of the murders, 8:30 a.m., the house cleaner came in. She said Marty and Arlene appeared friendly to each other and ate breakfast together. Between 10 and 11 a.m., Seymour and Marty brought Marty's Lincoln to Liberty Auto Repair and asked Liberty's owner, Peter, to examine the Lincoln's exhaust system. Now, one of the issues in this whole case has been that he was pissed off that he got this old Lincoln. He didn't like it. He thought if his parents weren't around, he would have a better car. However, he was fixing up the Lincoln. But he also said something at the dealership, the repair place, which is like, I don't want to drive this car because I'm not and then he used the N-word. And that came from the guy who ran the place. That's concerning. Okay, so then let's see. They returned. Yeah, this is what he said. Marty said he didn't want to drive that piece of shit to school. And it was the eve of Marty's senior year in school, and he said that he wasn't a effing N-word. So according to this, the guy at the auto shop, Marty was belligerent, kind of loud, and mad. All right. Now, in the afternoon, another friend arrived and said he was very friendly and talkative and appeared to be in a good mood in the afternoon. Okay. The poker game of Tuesday, September 6, 1988, took place at the Tankleff house. Player Joseph, okay, there's a bunch of players. Everybody was in good spirits, including Seymour and Jerard Steurman. They were both in good moods. And so then Seymour said that he wanted to go to Atlantic City to get out of the area because he and Arlene were having problems and were at each other's throats. So the marriage was in trouble. So anyway, poker game goes on. Now they're all leaving the poker game. And this is important as far as evidence issues go. Now they're all leaving and they're all parked in the driveway. So the person who's in front of the other car has to leave first, and so on and so forth. The poker game was still underway when Tankleff and somebody. Oh, okay. So he's at the mall at that point. Marty drops off his friends, returns to the home at 9:30 p.m., where he's interrupted the game to get keys to a car that was blocking his car. According to Tankleff, he ate dinner, put away some clothes, showered, wrapped himself in a towel, and put a second towel on the pillow on his bed because his hair was still wet. Got that? That makes sense. I've done the same. Okay, now he's in bed in a towel. Then he testifies that when he was dry, he threw the first towel at the foot of his bed and went to his parents' bedroom where he gave his mother a kiss and a kiss goodnight. What? Somebody tell me what's wrong here. I'm having a few issues with this statement. When he was dry, he threw the first towel at the foot of his bed and went to his parents' bedroom where he gave his mother a hug and kiss goodnight. Wait. Yeah, that's a little weird. That's a little weird. Okay. Now he claims later on when he does his confession, that's supposedly coerced, that he was naked when he committed the crime, so he wouldn't get blood on his clothing, which is interesting because in the statement he's already naked when he's kissing his mother goodnight, which I doubt is true. So the question is, did he even go in to kiss his mother goodnight? Was he naked? I don't know, but it's a little off. Okay, so anyway, then he's testified. This is very important. He testified he went to his room, closed his door. Okay, let me go to his room. I want to show you the house and his room, because the closed door issue is going to come up in some of the issues of this whole thing. So here is the inside of the house. Okay, it's a long house and it's a flat, one story. This is his bedroom, and I don't know that is an accurate depiction of whatever the hell that bed and stuff is. He said when he got into his bed, it was like getting into a cave, which, by the way, is going to be interesting because he somehow is in this cave when he's sleeping. I don't know quite. I don't have a real picture. Now, there's his bedroom. There's his doorway. The master bedroom is literally right across from him. I mean, we're talking just a hallway across from him. He does claim he never heard anything happening. His mother is being bludgeoned in that room, bludgeoned and stabbed to death. Supposedly she's fighting, and he doesn't hear anything. Now they do some tests, and they think that maybe if both doors were closed, it was hard to hear. So he says his door was closed to his bedroom. He closed the door. Okay, keep that closed door in mind. Set his alarm for 5:35 a.m. so he could finish working on his car before school. So he used to work at the bagel shop. I guess his father thought he should get some experience, and so he worked in the bagel shop. I guess it was the Steurman's baker's his shop, and so he was used to getting up early. So he didn't have an issue but getting up early and working on his car before going to school. First day of school, I don't know. Maybe he just really was into the car that he hated. That he was way happier if his parents were gone so he could get a better one. Anyway, then he went to bed. All right. Keep in mind the alarm for 5:35 a.m. I think this is important. So anyway, then the people start leaving the poker game. And they're going away. Okay, one guy says he went into the kitchen, and there was a watermelon. And there was some plastic on it. So he took that off, and he cut a piece of the watermelon. And then he covered it, and then he laid the knife down on the counter. This is important, too, as far as what knife was used in this killing. Was that the knife, or did somebody come in and bring a knife with them and had nothing to do with this guy? All right. All of them left, and the last person in there was Steurman. Steurman testified. So he's having a private conversation with Seymour. So the two business partners were chatting. Steurman said, I spoke with Seymour for a minute or two, like we always do after a card game, about how much he had won or lost. Moments later, Montefusco, one of the guys, and Steurman were outside, as were the other two, in cars preparing to leave. Seymour remained in the house. Some cars blocked others and the players, with one exception, because they're leaving in reverse order because they're blocking each other. After Montefusco left, only Steurman, Cesare, and Raskin remained. Cesare, who arrived first, expected Steurman to be next. But because Steurman's car was alongside Cesare's car rather than blocking it, Steurman did not have to leave next. And according to Steurman and Cesare, Steurman waved Cesare to go ahead. He said he was being polite because there was a 95-year-old guy in the car, Raskin, an elderly man. And he was saying, just go ahead. And he testified that he followed Cesare out, although Cesare testified he did not notice Steurman's car was behind him. So we come up with the question, did Steurman leave the house with everybody else? Or did he not leave the house? Did he just say, go ahead? And then once they went ahead, he went back into the house? Keep that in mind as a possibility. He could have gone back in the house. But Steurman testified he went straight home. He also testified he'd forgotten his house keys. He rang the doorbell, and his daughter, Barry Steurman, opened the door. And she said when she opened the door, she looked at her clock, and it was 3:18 a.m. And she opened the door for her father, and he went to bed. Now, So he has theoretically an alibi for not committing the murder himself. But the alibi is his daughter, so how good is that? And she says she looked at the clock. It was 3:17. Was it? Was it not? Could have been 3:27. She saw it wrong. Could have been 3:38. I don't know. But also the question would be, if Steurman was involved, let me just show you, throw Steurman up here again so you remember who he is. Steurman. Okay, if it was him who was involved in the crime, there's a couple ways. There's 3 ways he could be involved in the crime. So let me point them out to you. 1, he stayed behind and killed both of them. 2, he stayed behind so he could open the doors so that if he hired hitmen, they could get in the house without breaking and entering. 3, he just left and still hired somebody and they got in the house anyway. Those are some theories about how Steurman could be involved. All right, so now what happens is at 5:30 a.m., okay, that's at the Steurman house. Okay, Steurman's what? Anyway, 5:35 a.m., this is what the statement is. Marty awoke and got out of bed. Marty testified he was too tired to work on his car, and after shutting off the alarm, he went back to bed. So he decided, I don't feel like it. So he goes back to sleep. And then he said he got out of bed at 6:05 a.m., put on underwear and shorts. So back to, was he naked when he said bye-bye to good night to mommy? Wait, he put on underwear and shorts, but wouldn't he have had underwear and shorts on when he went to say goodbye to mommy? So I don't know what that means. First of all, do I believe he'd go in naked to say goodbye to his mother? No. And if he didn't bother to get dressed at that point, I don't think he ever went to say goodnight to his mother. I think that's nonsense. So that's a lie. I think something is wrong with that statement. Why he's making that statement, I don't know, but something's kind of wrong about that. So anyway, he says he gets up at 6:05, puts on underwear and shorts, but did not put on his glasses or contact lenses. He testified that he walked to his parents' bedroom and looked in, seeing no one was there. Okay, so let's go back to a picture of his house. Where is our bedroom? Where's the bedroom go? Where'd the bedroom go? Okay, wait a minute. Oh, sorry. Let's see, where's it? Okay, so he says he left his bedroom. He had to open the door. And my next question is, he says, walked to his parents' bedroom, looked in. Now, here's an interesting question. Did the parents, and I never saw an answer for this. And so one of the times when you're trying to analyze crimes and you can't get a proper answer because you didn't get to do the, interviewing yourself. Did the parents keep the bedroom door open all the time? I don't know about you. No, well, let me say this. I know that when I was married, that bedroom door was closed. Because the last thing I needed was a kid coming in there, and getting surprised. However, I do remember when I was growing up, my parents' door was always open. I don't know what it says about my parents, but I do remember it was always open. And I find that really weird. So I can't say whether his parents' door was actually closed or was actually open. And if it was actually open, was that normal for them? So that when he saw the open door, he didn't go, why is the door open? But he thought that was normal. So he looked in and didn't see his parents in there. So in other words, he wasn't actually opening the door to look in, which would be odd. Because if he's getting up again, I would like to know what time all the parents get up. And he says, seems like his parents got up early. So he looked in to see it and saw no one in there. Although the drapes were open, TV was on, and apparently mom was lying there, their head coming out of she's behind the bed, like between the bed and the window, but her head is sticking out. But he says he never saw her there, and didn't see his father there either. And if actually the actual bed itself which I think is also interesting. The bed itself doesn't even look like it was slept in on that one side. So Mom was supposedly in the room when he supposedly went in naked to say goodnight. And then he goes in the morning and looks in and doesn't see her lying on the floor. And he comes back later and sees her, but not then. I don't know why that is. But anyway, he testified he walked to his parents' bedroom, looked in and saw that no one was there, walked down the lighted hallway. So the lights were on in the hallway, which was odd. And he testified the kitchen lights and his father's office lights were on, and which again would be odd. Generally speaking, even though they were up to 3 o'clock in the morning, if Daddy's going to bed, he should be tired after all that, would go through and turn off all the lights and get in bed with his wife. But they were all on. And then he entered his father's office and saw his father behind the desk. Remember the word behind the desk, by the way. Seated upright in a reclining chair with blood on him. Okay, I'm going to show you some pictures of the crime scene without the body in it. Now, this is the mother's place, by the way. That's the mother's room, sorry. This is the poker table. The poker table was actually in the office. This is the reclining chair, and that is the desk. Now, apparently, when the EMTs and everybody came in, they had to move everything. So I think that desk was in front of the chair. It's very confusing because there's another desk over there. So, wait a minute, I'm a little confused. Okay, what is that? Yeah, there are 2 different desks apparently. So I don't know, but there was supposedly a desk in front of the chair, and they had to move that to get to him. And then on the floor, you see that's, I think, a bloody towel. But if you look around, there's not a lot of blood on the floor, which I find very interesting. Now, some of this damage, you see all the crap all over the place, that's caused by the EMTs. And so one of the problems you have with a crime scene, which somebody's still alive, is the EMTs and firefighters and everybody come in, they screw the hell out of that scene. If the person's already dead, then they're like, oh, everybody stop, let's nobody go in. And then the scene is pristine, and but once you get somebody in there trying to save somebody's life, they mess the whole place up. So I don't know exactly where everything is, but I will note this. Supposedly, the desk was in front of his chair, and he was behind the chair, and in the chair behind the desk. There is blood on the chair and on him, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of blood on the floor. With mommy is in the bedroom. Most of the blood you see is on her legs and arms and stuff behind the bed, and maybe on her head. But again, not a lot in the room. And in between the mommy's room, the parents' bedroom, and office, if you go back to the pictures, from way back on there, where the mother's there and the father's over on the other end, there is no blood trail between the 2 areas. Now, Seymour's blood, there's some of Seymour's blood in the room with the mother. Not a lot, but a tiny bit. And but in between, there's no trail of blood, which the defense team thinks is pretty weird, because you got a kid supposedly he went in and killed his mother first. That he claimed he beat her on the head with a barbell, and then she didn't die. So he went to the kitchen and got a knife and came back and slashed her throat. Then he went through the house over to the office, where he found his dad sleeping in the chair, because he thought his dad and mom are going to both be in the bedroom, he says, and he was going to kill them at the same time. But Dad wasn't in there. So he said he went over to the office and found Dad sleeping in the chair, went behind him with a barbell, smashed him in the head. He said he smashed him, hit him silly. And then he cut his throat, and then he went and took a shower. That's kind of the story. So that's in the confession. But back to what he said originally. He says that he looked in, saw his father behind the desk. Behind the desk. This is very important. He's behind the desk in a chair. And when we're looking at possible suspects, you have to kind of wonder, if he's behind the desk and somebody comes into the house to kill him, would they go all the way around behind the desk and try to get behind him? I mean, would he hear nothing? Would he not wake up? That seems a little odd to me. That is interesting. So he saw his father with the blood on him. He testified he ran up to his father screaming, "Dad, Dad, Dad." And seeing Seymour's throat had been cut, he called 911 from the office telephone, which was on the desk. Now, at 6:11 a.m., the emergency services dispatcher, Patricia Flanagan, who should never work another day in her life because she sucks. God awful. If you watch the 48 hours, you hear the phone call. She should have been fired that day, and I don't know if she was. So she got the call. She testified that the caller, Marty Tankleff, said he had found his father bleeding from the neck. Okay, this is the phone call. I'm not going to play it, but I have the words. Marty says, he's gushing blood, please. And she says, all right, listen to me. Is this a private house? He says, yes, it is. She says, all right, now listen. He says, it's a red driver. And she goes, listen to me. I'm sending you an ambulance, which is fine. She says he's sending an ambulance. This is important. So he now says he's looked in. He didn't see his mom. He goes over to finds his father in the chair, gash in his neck, bleeding, gushing blood. And she's annoying as crap, this person. But she says an ambulance is on the way. And the ambulance is only 5 minutes out, by the way. Very, very short period of time. Then she says this. Here's what you need to do. Wrap wherever he's gushing blood from. Okay? Hold pressure on it. And we all know that if you're gushing blood, I mean, the one thing you got to do is put pressure. Wherever it's bleeding, you got to put pressure on to stop the bleeding so that so the person doesn't lose so much blood they can't survive, right? So she told him to do that. He says, okay. Then she said, lay him down if possible. Okay, because then she says, get his feet elevated and we'll have someone down there for you. I'm like, what? So you want to get him out of the chair, put him on the ground. You want to elevate his feet so he can bleed more from the neck. I know. I mean, I worked in a hospital a lot. And I think that's not correct advice. I think you do not elevate any of the lower part of the body when you're bleeding from this part of the body. I mean, the last thing you want to do is have the gravity go that way. Just saying, I think that's really weird. But she does say that. So he has reason to do what he does next, which is he goes to get a pillow to put under his father's feet and a rag, a clean one, to put on his neck, to put pressure on it, so that his father doesn't die before the ambulance comes. All right, I'm going to stop just for a second. Taylor says, tell me the kid was covered in blood upon arrival. No, he was not. Only his hands. Oh, yeah, you saw that. She was unbelievable. She sucked. She had no patience. She was horrible, horrible, horrible operator. Okay. Could the dad maybe not have went to bed in that room, maybe slept in the decliner? Yes. He did fall asleep in the decliner. Whether he was, the recliner. Did I say decliner? He did fall asleep apparently in the recliner. That's what it appears. Although we don't know he was ever asleep. He may not have been asleep. He may have still been awake. Now, if he was still awake and two people came in the house that were killers and he didn't know them, you would think there would be a different scenario. If he was awake, the only person who could probably get behind him might be his business partner, because he knows him, or his son. Those are the only two. So you say here, he killed the mom the night before and the dad in the morning, which is why he was still alive. And that's a good question. I have some theories on the time frame, so I'll get to that in a minute. But that's a good point. He did have a motive for the wife. The business partner hated the wife. The wife was annoying as hell. She was really not very nice about him and the business partner. She was kind of really into money. So yeah, I think he would have taken out the wife too. I think that's, yeah. So if it was the business partner, he could be in and out. Well, being the last person there, unless people saw him leave, if I were him and other people were leaving, I'd want to make sure they saw my car leave and I go around the block and come back. You know what I mean? So they would think I'd left rather than not being sure. If he was the last person there and he was still in the house, or he went back in the house, just didn't leave and went back in, then he could go get the knife and some heavy object and go and say, hey, put the finger on, hey, put your hands behind your back. Hey, Seymour, what you looking at? And you get behind him. He's like, wow, possible? Yes. And then he would know that the wife was in the bedroom. So he would go and kill the wife. He could. And then he'd know that Marty was in that bedroom. Now, he knew Marty forever. So it's possible he wouldn't want to kill Marty. So is it possible he would leave Marty alive? If it was just that one guy and he didn't want to hurt Marty, is it possible that he didn't kill him because he knew he was asleep in there or whatever? Possible. It's possible. He now, mind you, the business partner has a week later he cleaned out a joint account and he faked a suicide and he disappeared to California. So that doesn't make him look good. Okay. So he said at that point, he was claiming that, he had murdered his parents and he was getting a lot of flack from people and his life was falling apart. And he said he just couldn't handle it anymore. So he just faked a suicide. So he just escaped from everything. Now you can decide whether he was escaping the murder issue because he actually murdered them, or you can say he was escaping because he just couldn't handle things. And according to a lot of people, he was kind of that kind of guy. So I don't know. So it is interesting. So anyway, next, let's see. How would you not notice a head sticking out? He claimed he couldn't see anything. It was too dark, but supposedly it wasn't that dark at that moment in time. So, but there is some reason to think maybe he didn't see his mother in there. If he's innocent, there's a reason he didn't see his mother in there. Can he not start his day without looking in on his parents? That's an interesting point. Unless he was very attached to the hip, which he did seem kind of that way. Yeah, that is interesting. I know if I was starting my day, I don't think I'd look at my parents' bedroom. But so that is interesting. Let's see. We could all use a dressing gown. Okay, let me go further now. Okay, so the next part of it, so the ambulance is on the way. Now, this is the next part. He says, the 17-year-old Tankleff testified he retrieved a pillow from his room and a clean towel from the linen closet and returned to his father. All right. This is one of the problems. This is where I start having a few problems with Marty. Okay. There's the office over there. His bedroom and the linen closet is right next to his bedroom. Oh, does anybody have issues with this statement? I'm taking you through this with me so you can think. Yes, all the lights in the house were on pretty much. The lights in the parents' bedroom weren't on. The television was on and the curtains were slightly open. Okay. Where's my breakfast, Mom? Now you're making me hungry. God, I am hungry. Oh, that's terrible. Felicity says, I think he was escaping the murder issue. Why figure on death if you're having a breakdown? Because he didn't want to deal with anything? One of the problems we have with cases and people's behaviors is anything can make you look guilty and anything can make you look innocent. So he's done things that make him look guilty, and so has the business partner done things to make him look guilty. And so, and there's going to be 3 other guys I'm going to bring in here who supposedly committed the hit that also look guilty. Being too slow getting the pillow and towel. Yeah. Wouldn't you just grab the first thing and hand it? Would you? There were towels in the kitchen. I love it when you guys are good profilers. There are towels in the kitchen that were closer. You think? Okay, so Daddy's bleeding out. Okay, so let me go back to the picture here. Okay, so Daddy's in the office bleeding out. According to Marty, he says he's gushing blood at that point. Whether he was gushing blood, which I actually don't believe he was, but that's what Marty said. And they're telling him, you got to stop the bleeding, right? So if you wanted to stop the bleeding, he's in an office, okay? He's in an office. Let's look at some of the pictures of the office. There's shit in the office. There's stacks of books. There's all kinds of objects in there that he could simply put under the foot of his father if he really thought he had to raise his feet, which he shouldn't. But anyway, he wouldn't know any better. But there's things in there. He could have used anything. One of those chairs. What about that? No, sorry, not that one. There's a chair. What? I'm looking for the, where'd that go? Yeah, there's chairs even. You can put his father's feet up on the bloody chairs. You know what I mean? Which aren't bloody. But you can do that. Then, like you say, he needs a towel to put on his neck. Right next door to the kitchen. There's tons of kitchen towels, I'm sure. They were rich people, so they had stuff. He was also wearing supposedly a sweatshirt. Now, I'm not saying it's totally clean, but even though she says it should be clean, quite frankly, if you're bleeding out, you could pick up a rag from any place. And you could pick up your underwear and shove it on my neck and put pressure on it. You know what I mean? Because I want you to stop the bleeding. We'll worry about contamination later. So he goes all the way through the house while his daddy's bleeding to death. Now, mind you, the ambulance showed up 5 minutes, supposedly within 5 minutes. And he's going all the way to the house. He's got to get a pillow. He's got to go in the cabinet, get that up, all the way back to the house. Meanwhile, dad's bleeding. Now, next is where it gets really interesting. When you may not like McCready, and because he is kind of a dick, you know what I mean? You might not like him, but he thought this guy was guilty. This young guy was guilty right away because he said, I've done enough stuff and I saw guilt. And I didn't buy a story, and I didn't like his demeanor. And a lot of people say, well, you can't just go by demeanor. Some people act differently. Yes, but you put demeanor with information and evidence, and you maybe together you come up with I'm looking at this guy as the guy who did it. So McCready didn't like his demeanor and some of the things he was saying and doing. So he says, okay, so after he retrieves a pillow and the clean towel, he testifies he pulled the chair out from behind the desk, turned it 90 degrees, trying to get it to recline by using the chair's lever when he tried, but the chair tipped forward, causing Seymour to slide a little in the chair. He testified to put his right arm around Seymour's shoulder. Now, mind you, the guy's been bludgeoned and his throat's cut. He doesn't have any blood here. And his left arm under his legs, and pulled him off the chair and put him on the floor, where I don't see any blood at all. So I'm a little confused over this. Anyway, he testified that Seymour in the chair were covered in blood, and he got blood on his hands, on his shoulders and his lower leg, but not on his shorts. Well, the only blood he had that was noticeable was supposedly on his shoulder, but it was underneath the thing he was wearing, the zip up sweatshirt, whatever he's got, a sweatshirt thing he had on. It was underneath. So how the hell did blood get under there and not on top of it? But anyway, this is where I find this fascinating. He testified they put the pillow under Seymour's feet, and he picked the pillow up because he thought it might make pretty comfortable for his dad, a nice cushy pillow. Your dad is gagging to death on blood and is going into a coma or is in a coma. I don't think he cares how comfy the pillow is, But he's 17, so maybe he's just not bright, And the towel he put the pillow under Seymour's feet and the towel over the neck wound. This is when I talk about red flags. Now, there's interesting possibility that he didn't do the crime, but there were red flags. This is one of them. This is the biggest one that drives me nuts. He put the towel over the neck wound, and he pushed down once on the towel and ran. What? Okay, the ambulance is on the way. You pushed down on the towel once, took the pressure off, and ran. Then he says he thought his mother might have gone out for milk. So he went to the garage to look for her car. Now, he didn't see his mother in the bedroom, but, he didn't go back and look for sure. You know what I mean? But anyway, because he thought his mother wasn't in the bedroom. So he decided he would go look in the garages for her car. Testified he did not remember if the car door had been locked, but he did remember turning the garage door handle and opening the door. Finding his mother's car inside, he testified he closed the door, re-entered the house, and went to his parents' bedroom. And upon entering, saw his mother dead on the floor. This time he saw her. According to Tankleff, he then ran to the kitchen and from the main kitchen telephone called his sister, Sherry, and said, "Get over here. I think Mom and Dad have been murdered." I only think so. Okay. He testified to return to the office where Seymour was gagging and then to the kitchen when the telephone rang. He testified it was Sherry and he told her, "Just get over here." He testified that he hung up and he called the Perrone house. That Mark Perrone or whatever, mother answered that, and he told her, "I think my mother and father have been murdered." He testified he returned to his room, wiped his hands and only his hands on the towel at the foot of his bed, put on a sweatshirt. And now he says you put the sweatshirt on now, and ran out of the house, down his driveway to the street and up the driveway of the next door neighbor, Morton Hova. Hova, who was sitting on the toilet, heard someone screaming, and he got off the toilet and opened the door. And he said he saw this nice kid from next door. He said Marty was wearing shorts and a zip-up sweatshirt, but was barefoot. And he said, somebody murdered my parents. And now the officers are there, and they said they saw that he was upset or agitated. Agitated? Oh, wait a minute. No. Sorry, that's not the officers. They followed Tankleff to the house, and Tankleff said, "My mother's in the bedroom." Gallagher went to the master bedroom, and Crane, Tankleff, and Hova went to the office. According to Hova, Tankleff kept saying, "Murder, murder." And Hova, who just couldn't imagine that Seymour and Arlene had been attacked, asked Tankleff if somebody had murdered the dog. And he said, "No, they murdered my parents, both of them." And then he said, "Who did it?" And Tankleff said, "My father's business partner, Jerry." All right. So is Crane? Who is Crane? Is that one of the officers? Oh, they are officers. Sorry, they're officers. I was wondering why the hell in the house if they weren't officers. Okay, so Crane observed that Seymour was on the floor. His feet were propped up by a pillow, and his clothes were saturated with blood, and there was a towel laying over his neck or draped over his neck. According to Crane, he administered first aid to the unconscious Seymour by applying pressure to Seymour's neck wounds. By the way, one of the most interesting things I saw I think it was 48 Hours or one of the shows, they asked Marty if he did put pressure on the wound, do that, what they told him to do. And this is what Marty said. Oh, sorry, that's not what Marty said. Where is what Marty said? Where? No, don't you be missing. Oh, maybe, where is it? Oh, okay, here it is. And they asked him from 48 Hours, he was gushing blood, and did you do that? And he said, "I did that." Put pressure on the wound. Now, mind you, this is 48 Hours. This is not right after the crime. He claims to this day, apparently, that he put pressure on the wound, but he did not. He pushed once and ran. And then he went outside, he checked the garage, checked for his mother's car, made phone calls, went to the neighbor's house. Daddy's dying in there from the blood gushing from his neck. If he's so concerned about his daddy dying, what the hell is he doing? He knows the ambulance is on the way. All he has to do is put pressure on the wound, like they told him, stay there with his dad to keep his dad as alive as he can, and they'll be there to do whatever they got to take over. But instead, he walks away from his father, leaving his father to have blood gush out of his neck. That is why he was suspected as being the murderer of his parents. Now, the question you had asked before is, if he really had killed his parents, wouldn't he make sure his dad was dead before he made the phone call? And that's a good question. I mean, it is an interest. His mother was clearly dead, so that wasn't an issue. Why would he at that point make the phone call if his father wasn't totally dead? And according to one of his confession was that he thought he would be dead before they got there. So I don't know if he wanted to, if he was guilty, he just wanted to call and make it look like he just found his father, and therefore, but he knew his father. If you beat your father's head in with a barbell and cut his throat, it probably would think he's not going to make it. And therefore, it may, again, we're talking about 17 years old. He either is just stupid in general and did all kinds of stupid things and he's not guilty of anything, or he also was stupid and thought, hey, by the time they get here, he'll be dead. And he did last for quite a while in a coma. He didn't die right away, so he did last. So, but his brain was bashed in. So, so there's two sides to it. One is he didn't try to save his father's life, and the other side of it is, why would he have made the phone call? Why didn't he just wait to make sure his dad was dead before he did that? It's also possible. This is one thing I think is possible. I don't know. He said his father was making noises and stuff. I didn't see that from the police or from the EMTs that he was gagging and everything. So the question would be, is that something he heard earlier and said, okay, he's a goner. And when he stopped gurgling, when he made the phone call, he said, oh, blood is gushing from his neck, because even though it wasn't gushing from his neck, it would sound like it had just happened and that he was trying to save his dad's life. So it would look good, which it did. And in a way, it did look good, because that's why you're asking the question, why would he? But maybe he thought that. Maybe he already, all that stuff had already passed. There was no gushing of blood. He didn't have a good reason to put pressure on, although when the officer arrived, he did put pressure on that spot, because that's where the drape thing was, how much anything was gushing at that point. So it may have stopped gushing quite a while back, and he pretty much assumed his father was like going to be dead in seconds. But he might as well call 911 and say, hey, blood is gushing. Therefore, so it's an interesting, a whole bunch of interesting issues with this, because if you have Jerry, the business partner, Jerry, killing him right at the time, right after the game, then he would have had to survive at least 3 hours in that condition. After being bashed in the head and his throat cut, he would have had to survive 3 hours before Marty gets up. Is it possible? I guess, because he did survive for I think a month in a coma. So it's possible that the crime could have gone down right after the game, which means probably that Jerry would have done it alone and didn't hire a hit. He would have just snuck in there. He would not have been suspicious, used whatever was in the house. I don't know what kind of heavy object he would have used, because I guess the Marty's room had the barbell stuff in it and the weight stuff in it. So he wouldn't have had access to that. Did he use something else? Maybe. Maybe that's why. I don't know. That's one of the possibilities. So I'm keeping all these things out there right now, so you can ruminate over all of them. Let's see. It looked better for him that way. Well, it would. Carla, is it possible Dad was stunned or knocked out initially, making no noise, but gurgling later? Possibly. New series, Doug Carter Explains. I'm not sure. Am I familiar with Doug Carter? Who's Doug Carter? I'm blanking now. Because Sarah was saying I don't like him. It's true. Could he have used his tire iron? Very good, Melanie. He could have used a tire iron. That was one of the theories, because they felt some of it matched actually a barbell. But again, are we talking about the bar? We're talking about something, more like a dumbbell. Could he have used a tire iron? Sure. I mean, they never quite figured out that. So yes, he could have gone out to his car, said, I'm going to go back in and do this asshole in, and go get the tire iron, go in there and put it behind his back and walk up. And because again, one of the most important things is he would have allowed somebody to get behind him. This to me is an important point. He allowed somebody to get behind him. Now he could have been sleeping. If he was totally asleep, I would think that he would be hit straight on. Nobody would be getting behind him. What's the point? You know what I mean? You just whack him right there across the desk. So if hired killers came in and he was asleep, if he wasn't asleep in the chair and he saw hired killers come into the house, which there are supposedly these hired killers, which I'll give that scenario in a minute. You would think he would jump up. He would fight back, and that didn't happen. Somebody got behind him and whacked him over the head enough to knock him, basically make him unconscious, so that then cutting his throat was not so difficult. Same thing with the mom. Now, she seemed to have fought, so I think beating her on the head finally knocked her out, and then the person came in and whacked, did the knifey thing. But for me, I have trouble with the hit because that somebody got behind Seymour. And the only two people I think who got behind Seymour is his own son and Jerry, his business partner. But yes, could Jerry have taken on and gotten the tire iron out of his car, and then everybody's left and didn't see him following? He just went back in, left the door open, walked back in. Possible. That guy? Oh, yeah, we don't have to pay any attention to anything he says. He's a horrible, horrible, horrible investigator. Doug Carter's like a blowhard and makes 0 sense half the time that he talks. Oh, him, yeah. If he was gushing blood when the son called the cops, wouldn't that mean the crime happened very recently? Maybe. There's two possibilities. One is that, there's two weapons, and there's bashing the head in with something heavy, and then there's a knife that cut their throats. It could have been that the crime went down in 2 different times. Somebody could have bashed the head of all of them and made them unconscious, then came back and said, oh, they aren't dead enough. What should I do? I guess I need to cut their throats. Now, that could have happened 15 minutes later, could have happened an hour later. Don't know. But so it could have theoretically happened at 2 different times. The gushing could have happened. Well, the question is, was there ever any gushing? Now, the mom, when her throat was cut, that was solid, and so she died very quickly from the, coming through the arteries and jugular vein and all that. Daddy apparently, he had like strong neck or something, and so when he was cut, he never went through anything so serious. So he was bleeding out slowly, possibly inhaling and all that kind of stuff. So he was choking on his blood, but he wasn't actually, there wasn't a jugular, So they could have happened right after each other, and they could have happened with time in between. We don't know. It could have happened earlier, because they kind of think there was a lot of dried blood on them. So it didn't seem like they'd just been killed. So it does appear that they were killed earlier, because at least there's a lot of dried blood all over that would indicate probably it did happen earlier in the night. And the fact that he was sleeping in the chair, or not sleeping in the chair, as the case may be, he just hadn't gone to bed yet. So did he sleep in the chair for 3 hours and somebody came in and killed him at 6 a.m, like his own son? Or did all this happen earlier? Because mom was still, the TV was still in mom's room. I don't know if they slept with the TV going. I don't know if he normally went to bed right after, or just, was he still awake and somebody came in and did him in right there about 3 o'clock, and he just didn't die. She died right away. He didn't die right away, but maybe the person who attacked him thought he was dead and left, or the person who attacked him thought he was dead and then started cleaning up the scene and getting rid of the whatever weapons were used. So hard to say. Caitlin, I'd better get to work on my neck musculature and gaining weight to stay crime free, or free from death. Yeah. Let's see. So now, here's my big problem. He didn't try to save his father. So when we look at red flags, one of the red flags is, why is he going naked into his mother's room to say goodnight? I don't know. I don't believe he did that, but why is he even saying he did? 2, he closed his bedroom door, which is interesting to me. Because there is on the wall of his bedroom On the, supposedly there is, and I can't really see it in this picture, but there's supposedly his mother's blood is on the wall there, and on the, also on the light switch. Now, I don't know where the frick the light switch is. Usually light switches tend to be on the inside of the door, you know, right on that wall. There's a picture there, so I'm guessing it's probably somewhere, you know, let's look at his room. You come into the room. Where's his room? Okay. Okay. So here you come into his room. So I would guess maybe to the right when you're coming, you know, open up the door. I'm trying to figure out how the door would work there. And then maybe right on that wall to the right, you would have a light switch. His mother's blood is on it. According to Marty, he never touched his mother. His father's blood is, there's some of his father's blood in the mother's bedroom, and his mother's blood is on the light switch and next to the light switch. His door was closed. So there's only two reasonable possibilities as to what could happen. So we're going through it again, these different possibilities. What do you think? The door was open, apparently. According to him, it was closed. So if it was closed, which he says it was, oh, he led with, I just woke up, the old just thing. I just woke up. Really? Is that what it was? A Lamborghini? Wow, you see a lot there. Then he has some explaining to do. Okay. Okay, so there's only two ways the blood of his mother can get on the light switch. There's two ways. I'm looking for both ways. There's two. Well, somebody had to actually touch the light switch area. Mommy didn't do it. No, she did not put it there. It wasn't her. Okay, yes, it is transfer from the mother's room. Now, the father, now the father's dead or dying, and he's not doing anything. No. Okay, thank you, Carla. There we go. He killed her. In other words, since he said he never went in, he saw her eventually after he checked for her car in the garage, and then he checked in her room, and he finally saw her dead. He did not touch her. Therefore, if he put the blood on, walked him back into his room and turned on the light, then he was the one who killed her. Okay, hold on a second. I have to sneeze. Ready, start counting. Only one. Usually I sneeze like many times in a row. Okay. If he never touched his mother and he went in his room and touched the light to turn it on because he was getting items, doing something, then he killed his mother. The other option is, as you point out, or a murderer came to his doorway. Now, good old Jerry. If Jerry stayed if Jerry went to his car, got out of the tire iron, went back in, whacked his business partner on the head, then went in and whacked her on the head. Okay. And then checked to see if Marty was awake. The door is closed. That's what he says. The door is closed. He closed the door. Teenagers tend to close the door. I find it hard to believe that he went to bed, left his door open. Teens don't like to do that, and he says he didn't. If the door had been open and Jerry wants to peek in because he knows his son is there, and that's the kid who works with him, and he wants to make sure he's still asleep after he's whacked his mom and dad, and he leans in and just places his hand on the light. He's not turning the light switch on, just places his hand over there and looks and says he's still asleep, so okay, I'm good. Maybe. The problem I have is if the door's closed, there is no blood on the doorknob. Now, theoretically, could he have blood on one hand and not on the other hand? Yes, so it possibly opened up the door with the left hand and then touches the wall with the right hand. So is it still possible that Jerry killed him and then he did that? And the answer is yes. Let me introduce the hit theory just so you can get that in your head, and then I'll go back over some of the other interesting things about what happened. The hit theory is that Jerry's son, who was a drug dealer, said that Dad hired a couple guys to kill these two and paid them a bunch of money. And then this other guy drove them to the crime scene. The names of those people are, let me get this straight. The main guy is a guy named Creedon. You can get this from the shows, but this guy is Glenn Harris. Glenn Harris, supposedly, he's a witness. He said he drove Joseph Creedon, who was a nasty piece of work, and Peter Ken, who was another nasty piece of work that worked with Creedon. They did a lot of robberies. They were violent guys. He drove them to the Tankleff house on the night of the murders. Harris stated that Creedon and Ken, he was told that they were going to rob it, so he was just going to be the driver, from the getaway driver from the robbery. They went into the house. Now, mind you, he doesn't say they took a weapon in. They went into the house, and they emerged from the house with blood on them, suggesting they were involved in the killings. Now, the later statements are kind of amusing because, so these guys go into the house, and they come out all bloody. And they get in the car, and then they tell him to drive, and he drives to one of the guys' houses, and they get out and say, "We'll be back in a minute. I got to do something." And they're supposedly burning their clothes, right? Meanwhile, the driver decides to take a nap, so he gets in the back seat and lays down. So these guys have bloody clothes. They don't transfer any of the blood to the car, and this guy's lying on top of the blood and doesn't notice it. I mean, that doesn't make a bit of sense. And they were only in the house 10 minutes. So there was no break-in. There was no sign of a break-in. So how did they get in the house? Now, unless Jerry, when he left the doors open saying, "Hey, look, after the poker game, I'm going to leave the doors unlocked so you can get right in there." And, but that would have to happen like right after the poker game, because otherwise, he's going to go and lock up the house. If he's going to get up out of the chair, he's going to go lock the house up and go to bed. So then there would be a break-in, but there wasn't a break-in. So it would have to happen right after Jerry would have to say, "Hey, I'm leaving at 3:00. You got to be waiting out there. And as soon as all the cars leave and I leave, make sure that I'm gone. Then you go in and the doors will be open." But then again, it's likely he would be awake. In which case, I don't know how they're getting behind his chair and whacking him on the back of the head. It doesn't make sense. So later on, anyway, there's a claim that after they killed the two of them, they peeked into the bedroom of Marty to see if he was asleep or not. And they were going to kill him if he wasn't asleep, but he was asleep. You could see he was like, and he's in this cave. Marty says he's like in a cave area where he's like curls in, and it's really, they claim he's asleep, and therefore they leave. And I'm like, any respectable killer will know that he might be just playing possum there. It's like, "Hey, I hear you killing my parents. I'm just going to hide in here, pretend I'm asleep." You just go in and whack the crap out of that kid. Why would you care? I mean, you don't want that kid to wake up and call the police ASAP. So that story makes very little sense. And again, but that again would explain the blood. Although again, nothing's on the doorknob, just the blood there. There's also a claim by the defense that in the house, since there's no blood going through the house, they can't figure out how Marty did this and didn't leave like blood all the way through the house from one place to the other. Now, they've never really explained how the two guys who went in there to commit the crime, who've never been to the house before, know where even the hell to go. And they're a bunch of rough fellas, you know what I'm saying? So they're going in there and they're beating the living crap out of, and they're running around the house. Why wouldn't they be leaving a lot of blood all over the damn house? I mean, they would. And then it gets more interesting. So then originally there's never any talk about any weapon that they had. But later on, remember these three guys, there's all kinds of things that happen over these years. And I want to point out this fella who's come up with this alternative theory. That would be Where is he? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Wait a minute, is that him? So there he is. Okay, someone left the house with a murder weapon because they didn't find the murder weapon in the house, and so that was I lost the other picture. No, that's McCready. Okay, the guy that wrote the book. Okay, so a second. Okay, saltpeter. I thought it was saltpeter to begin with, but I thought that would probably not be correct. But anyway, saltpeter is the private investigator who investigates. And over this huge period of time, there's people that come forward and say these things. And they're never, it turns out that the court doesn't accept that this is very valid information because some are trying to get out of things. Some are just trying to blame stuff on other people. But you say to yourself, well, there's a bunch of different people who say these three men are involved. And they have a similar story. So how can these three men not be involved? And then one of the stories that comes up, of course, is that they looked in his room, which would account for the blood there, which how would they know that unless they were there? And then another one is that the guy actually had a pipe. And after they started driving off, he just tossed the pipe into the woods. Now, that was never found until saltpeter went in the car with the guy and said, where did he throw this out of the car? And the guy said, oh, yeah, about here. So saltpeter went out and he actually found a pipe. And it was all rusted and everything. So I've been there for a really long time. And so he was like, hey, I found the murder weapon. Mm-mm. So he gets it tested. Of course, it's been 17 years, 18 years. So nothing's on it. So you can't prove it was used in the murder. But then a little while later, supposedly there were other pipes in the area that were similar that were also around that area. So it's like, was that actually the murder weapon? Now, saltpeter. So the book is written, and he's out there saying, these three guys are the ones who really did the crime. That that Jerry hired these guys to kill him and paid them money. And it makes sense because that's why you couldn't find the murder weapon, because they took the murder weapons with them. And this poor guy, just got blamed for it because he was the only one left in the house. And he didn't have any marks on his body, any damage to it, but they never checked these other guys. So these guys could have been cut up and beat up, whatever, and nobody ever checked them way back then. So how do we know? But here's the thing. But you have to understand about believing stuff and not knowing whether it's true. Saltpeter is an interesting character. So he's involved in after this case, which he only took $5,000 for, and it ended up being 6 years of his life. And then he got really pissed off because after Marty got like the $10 million, he said, Marty, you kind of owe me because I spent 6 years of my life on this, and all I got was $5,000. And Marty basically told him to screw off because Marty didn't want to help him sell his book, and Marty didn't want to give him any money. So a lot of people say Marty's not a very nice guy. This guy saved your life, essentially. And with this alternative theory, and you kind of treat him like dirt. So anyway, this guy, saltpeter, let's see, is this him? Yeah, here he is. Okay, J. Saltpeter sent threatening messages to a man after working on his exoneration, according to the Nassau County District Attorney's Office. He harassed the living crap out of him, stalked him, harassed him, trying to get money out of him for a really long time. So questionable character? You betcha. He is a questionable character. And, and he has nothing nice to say about McCready, but then he seems to be pretty much of a scumbag himself. Now, how do I know that? Well, some interesting things about him. He believes West Memphis 3 are innocent. Let's start with that one. He will work on a case, as he said. He can deceive people, and he will work to find a way to find that person innocent. So, in other words, can you trust him not to give information to the people he's getting when he's interviewing people that he says are involved in the crime? How much information is he giving them? How much did he tell them? Hey, there was some blood on his light switch. You better say you peeked in there. You better say you took the weapons with you. You better say this. You better say that. How much did he feed them this information? Is it possible he planted the pipe? Or did he just get lucky and find some pipe that was around some other pipes? just got lucky there, but it wasn't actually. So I think saltpeter manipulates, exaggerates. I think he will do whatever he takes to be the one to prove that he didn't do it. So whether he did or didn't do it, saltpeter is not one to be trusted. Now, another case he worked on was the Zachary Whitman case. Zachary Whitman was convicted of killing his brother, his little brother, when he was a teenager. Zachary was a teenager. He killed his little brother. His little brother was what? Hello, it was Greg Whitman, maybe 10 years old. So, well, anyway, stabbed him and almost cut his head off. Stabbed him like 60 times. Almost cut his head off. Buried the knife in the backyard. And saltpeter was like, I'm on this case. This poor teen is innocent. He's innocent. He's innocent. I worked on that case too, because the family came to my house from Pennsylvania to Maryland. They sat in my office, and they told me he was innocent. Their teenage son, didn't kill their other kid. It's a Cain and Abel story, and I will link below my video on that. And I looked at the information they had, and I said, look, I can't work for you, and I can't spend any more time on this, because I'm going to tell you, your son did it, and I could drive a Mack truck through the holes in your defense. I'm so sorry. And he got convicted. It was overwhelming evidence. He got convicted. And what happened was, years later, he was able to take, because of some technicality, he was able to take a plea bargain that let him out of prison early. So he didn't have to spend the rest of his life in prison. He took a plea bargain and said, okay, I did it. And I think his parents, and there's actually, in my video, I think I linked that too. I think it was a Netflix thing or something, a documentary on the case. And pretty much everybody said, my God, those parents are in denial. And they are. So I think he told his parents, look, I'm finally going to say I did it just so I can get out. And they're like, okay, that's fine. We know you didn't do it. So but to get you out, say you did. So anyway, there he is, Zachary Whitman. Guess what he did when he got out? He became a lawyer. So he also became an attorney. He became an attorney. Zachary Whitman became an attorney. I don't know what it is about these guys that want to become attorneys when they get out, but you learn a lot in prison. You can become a jailhouse lawyer, and then when you get out, you work for the Innocence Project, even if you're not innocent. So this guy, this character, I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. I think he manipulated the witnesses. I think he put words in their mouth, and he said that that's exactly what the detective did to Marty. That the detective coerced Marty into saying what he did, and yet he's, I think, coercing his people into saying what they did. And I do not believe that those two guys went in there and committed the crime, because I don't see breaking and entering. I don't see the kind of violence they would have done and how much blood they probably would have left every place. I think would be more. I don't think they would have cared about him staying alive if he was told there's a teenager in the house. I think that would be chancy to leave him alive. I don't believe they got into this guy's car and didn't leave blood in his car. None of it makes sense to me. So I do not buy it, and I do not think that if the doors were left open by Jerry, so they could get into the house, they wouldn't have found him still awake, and there would have been more of a fight with him, because he's a big guy. And they wouldn't have gotten behind him, because they would have said, who the hell are you guys? And, I find it hard to believe. Is it possible? I guess. And then is it possible that Jerry himself went back in the house with a tire iron and killed them, and didn't want to kill Marty because he knew him? Is it possible? Yes. But then we get to the part about Marty. And so while I think it's possible Jerry could do it, the things that Marty has said are concerning. First, that he said if he didn't have his parents weren't around, or if he got a hit on his parents, that's what he actually said, I could get any car I wanted. Let me pull up the actual statements that he made when he confessed. All right. And let's see if the confession makes any sense. Now, mind you, if he killed them, I don't believe he would have killed them after his alarm went off. Why don't I believe that? Because I'm going to say, if you're planning to kill your parents, you are not sleeping. You are awake, waiting for that moment. And I think after the poker game ended and everybody's out of there, he may have been skulking around. If he were guilty, he would be skulking around about then. So I think if it went down, it probably did go down more so right after the poker game, and he could have, gotten something from a bar from his bedroom and gone into his dad's office, got behind him, said, "What you looking at, Dad? How'd that go?" Could that happen? Yes. All right. Now, so let's see what he said. Oh, about the claims he makes that after he's found his father dead, and he goes and gets, now mind you, 5 minutes from the time he calls 911, he runs all the way across the house, gets a pillow and a towel, and goes all the way back across the house, and he places the pillow, get his father out of the chair, puts a pillow on him, puts the towel on his neck and goes, ouch, that hurt. Does that. Then he goes out to check on the car and opens the door, closes the door. As far as I know, it closed it. Then he goes back in the house. He goes and finds his mom. He makes a phone call from the kitchen. All this in 5 minutes is not going to happen. Now, what the police found was that this was interesting. He said he got blood on his hands. He's putting the pressure on it, the pressure on his dad. He's taking the father out of the chair, putting him on the floor, putting pressure on him after he gets the pillow and all that stuff. And he gets blood on his hands. That's when he supposedly gets blood on his hands, because he doesn't go back to his dad ever. He leaves his dad there till the police arrive. He never goes back and tries to help dad anymore, or sit next to his dad as he's dying. He doesn't do any of that. He supposedly makes a phone call from the office. So he's making a phone call from the office, and there's no blood there. That's for sure. Now they could have made that before he touched anything. So, okay. Then he's supposed to make a phone call from the kitchen after he touched his dad, and there's no blood on that phone. There's no blood on the garage door, the handle and anything. There's no blood there either. After he gets blood on his hands, there's no blood anywhere else in the house, like he touched things as he was running through or anything. The police suspect that he didn't do any of those things. And that what he did was, when he finally put the towel on the neck, it was right before the police arrived. Then he just did this to get some blood on his hands to look like he was trying to help his dad. He went outside when the police were there and asked if he could wash his hands under the spigot outside. I thought that was interesting. One reason I point that out is that the original claim that he made was after he killed his parents, he went and took a shower and washed all the implements in his hands and everything, but missed a spot on his shoulder. And other possibilities that he never went in that shower. He could have gone to the spigot outside and did all the washing up on the spigot outside. Maybe the reason he wanted to wash his hands under that spigot, just in case there happened to be any blood left in the ground. I don't know how smart he was at that point, that, if he washes his hands out there and there's other evidence of blood, nobody would suspect. But I don't know that they found anything there. But he ends up washing his hands in a puddle in the driveway. And let's see. So the police are suspicious because first of all, he couldn't have done all that in 5 minutes. There's no blood left any of the places he said he was at. They questioned that he didn't see his mother the first time he was there because her head was sticking out and there's light coming in. They questioned that. And I never see them really push the issue of the fact that he never did put pressure on his father's neck and let his father bleed out, theoretically, if he was actually gushing blood while he's running around doing stuff and not being with his father, not being with his father, not being with his mother, not being with his father, just live in the house. Anyway, except for making phone calls to everybody. All right. Now, what is his actual, let me go to his actual confession. Okay. Here's a confession. Okay, hold on. Okay. So this is a court document. So this is okay. All right. Oh, this is one interesting thing. When they finally said what they did to get him to confess was, after they said, "We don't buy your story," then this guy, the police guy, where's my picture? Oh, there he is. Okay, so McCready, he said he made it. He played a joke. He faked a call. He faked a call to the hospital and came back and said, "Your father came out of the coma, and he says it was you." And so, and at that point, Marty's like, "What?" Anyway, he's like, "Huh?" Then like, I didn't expect that. He hadn't even asked about his dad, how he's doing. But so anyway, so then it said here, and he said, "Why would your father say that?" And he said, his response was, "Well, if my father said that, it's because I'm the last person he saw." Really? Why would you be the last person he saw if you went to bed earlier? If you're in bed at like 11 o'clock at night, why would your father even see you? Or are you claiming that it's when you put pressure on his neck that although he was like comatose and his eyes were shut, his eyes opened up and he saw you, so he thought you did it? I guess that's what he was aiming at. All right. And he said, then he asked him, what should we, the other detective said, "What should we do to a person who did this to your parents?" And he answered, "Whoever did this to them needs psychiatric help." I've always find it interesting when people say the killer needs psychiatric help, or the killer must have just lost his mind, or the killer, no, in other words, the killer should die should be your answer. The killer should be put in prison for the rest of his life. He should pay for the crime. But when you're soft-hearted, it always makes me wonder who you're soft-hearted for. Then he said, "Could I have blacked out and done this?" And then he said, "It's not likely it's me, but it's another Marty Tankleff that killed him. I've heard this story before. It wasn't me, but my alternate ego, Could I be possessed?" So I've heard this from other people who've killed people as they go into this thing where they're trying out, they got all kinds of issues, with personality issues and schizophrenia or blacking out or dual personalities or whatever, multiple personalities. So then it says, they asked him, "Did you kill your mother and father?" And he said, did you kill your mother? And did you hurt your father? And he said, "Yeah, I did it." Now, here's his explanation of what he says why he did it. The defendant said he wanted to go to junior college in Florida for 2 years, and he wanted to live in his father's family's condominiums there. And when he completed the 2 years, he wanted to attend the University of Pennsylvania. And he said his mother didn't want him to go away to college. She wanted to keep him home under her thumb, which is interesting because in other places I've heard that he didn't want to go to college at all. He just wanted to work with his dad, and the parents were trying to force him to go to college. Anyway, the defendant said, "About 5 years ago, my parents separated. They've been fighting ever since. And because I'm adopted, I don't know what's going to happen to me if they separated or broke up," which has nothing to do with being adopted. He said he was confused about his father and that there was an issue concerning him, and his mother would side with him even if his father didn't. I don't know what all that's about. And so he says it was a nightmare and he had trouble coping with it. And then he had these chores that were posted on the refrigerator, and the last straw was he didn't set up the poker table like he was supposed to. And he resented a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, Matt, go. Okay, now here's the statement he made about the actual night. The defendant said he set his alarm for 5:35 and he got out of bed. He said he was naked. Here we are, he's naked again. And he supposedly slept naked. And he remained that way because he didn't want to get blood on his clothes. I sort of believe that if he's guilty. And again, if he's guilty, because all this stuff is really questionable. I don't believe for the minute that he set his alarm clock so he could get up at 5:35 and commit a homicide. That's pretty weird. Unless he thought, a concept could be that he thought both of them would be solid asleep in the bedroom and he'll just go and kill them in one spot. But I just find it hard to believe that he wouldn't be paying attention to the sounds of his parents going into the bedroom and going to sleep and waiting for it to be quiet. He wouldn't be asleep. I can't believe anybody about to kill people is going to be asleep till 5:30. Even psychopaths would probably be pretty, getting ready for it. So then he said he took a dumbbell from his room and went to the master bedroom. He was going to kill both his parents, but he said he was surprised that there were lights on in the house, and he was surprised not to see his father in bed. The defendant said he walked down to his father's office and saw his father sleeping in the chair at his desk. We asked the defendant what he did next, and he said he decided he was going to kill his mother first, which I find weird, because that statement right there. Now, mind you, the question is he lying when he's telling the story and he killed his parents, but he's making up a story that's not quite accurate? Or are the police feeding him stuff and he's putting together a story because he doesn't, I don't know. He's just coming up with something. I think it's a little weird. If you're going to kill two people, the one you kill first is your father because he's the big guy. Your mother can't fight as much, but your father can. So if your father's fallen asleep in the chair, the last thing you want to do is go and hit your mother over the head and have her start screaming so that your father comes in and stops it. So my opinion, no matter who came in to kill those two, they would kill Seymour first, because you always take out the male first. But he says he saw his father sleeping and he decided to kill his mother first. And then he said he walked down to the master bedroom and he had the dumbbell with him. And they asked him, did it hold dumbbell? And he says, no, just the bar. Okay, so he's not using the ends of it, just the bar. So he says he went into the mother bedroom and she was sleeping on her back. The defendant said that he leaped across the bed and he got to her quickly. The defendant said he hit her head on the barbell with a barbell and his mother started fighting with him. He said his mother was screaming out, why, and stop. And he said his mother was in a lot of pain and she kept fighting. He said it hit her on the head about 4 or 5 times and she fell on the floor. The defendant said he thought the noise might attract his father or wake him up. No shit. So the defendant said he started looking for a knife to cut his mother and stop the noise. The defendant said he ran to the kitchen and found a knife on the counter by the watermelon. The defendant said he took the knife and ran back to his mother's room and cut her throat and stabbed her. Now, she did have defensive wounds. And obviously, if you're beating somebody with things, you're going to go like this. And then if you're pretty much out of it, but your hands are still here and a person starts slashing at you, you might get what looks like defensive wounds, even if you're half out of it or all the way out of it. That he would not kill, that he would leave the father alive first and go for the mother first. That makes 0 sense. And mind you, the father's blood is in the room with her. So it does appear he was attacked first and then her. Which again, if you're going to put Jerry in the picture, he would go back in and take care of Seymour first, and then he'd know Arlene was in the bedroom, and he'd take care of her next, and then decide what to do with Marty. All right, so then he said he walked up to his father and went behind him and hit him on the head with a dumbbell, and his father said, why are you doing this? And the defendant said, I just knocked him silly. And some people say, oh, Marty would never say that. That's just not something he would say. Really? Well, if he's psychopathic, he would, but, because he wouldn't care. He'd just think it's a fine way to say what you did to your dad. So if he came up behind him because he was asleep in the chair or even awake and had the barbell behind him and he hits him over the back of the head, he'd realize his son was kidding him and he'd go, why are you doing this? I can see that. And then he keeps just beating him until he's like not going to talk anymore, right? And then he said he took the knife and he slashed his father's throat. Now, if I were interviewing, I'd like to know where the hell the knife was. It's quite a large knife. Where was the knife? I mean, did you have what? It's a bloody knife because you just cut your mother's throat. So where is it? Is it like in your pants? Where is it? In your other hand? I mean, where is it? I mean, did you have both of them behind your back and then you go whack, whack, and then you bring out the other one? I don't know. I'd like to know that. And then he said when you finished, okay, then when he did that, he couldn't believe all the blood. And then he said he went to the bathroom, he showered and washed off the barbell and the knife. And he said when he was finished showering, he put the knife back on the counter by the watermelon and put the barbell back in his room. And then he said he went into his room and he laid down on the bed and thought about what to do next. The defendant said about 6:10 a.m. he got out of bed and walked down the hall into his father's office. He said his father was still gagging. The defendant said he went to the master bedroom and his mother was dead. Then he called the 911 operator from the phone in his mother's room. Interesting. So now he's not making the phone call from the study, which they didn't think he made it from the study. The defendant said he took a towel from the linen closet and a pillow from his room and went to the father's office and pulled his father out of the chair, got him on the floor, put the towel on his neck, lifted up his feet, put the pillow under it. They asked him how he got blood on his hands, and he said he put his hands in the blood to make it look as though he'd given first aid to his father, which we know he did not. And how about the blood on your shoulder? He supposedly had this blood on his shoulder, which is underneath what he was wearing at the time. And they said, I showered and I must have screwed up. Okay, so he said he pretended to follow the instructions of 911, and he said he put the towel on his father's neck, but he really didn't apply pressure, which he clearly did not. And he thought his father would die before the police arrived. The problem I have with Marty is that statement right there. I mean, that's the biggest problem I have. If he had been sitting next to his father, pressing on that wound, and the police arrived and he was crying next to his dad and pushing, please, dad, please, and he is still there with it, I wouldn't have as many suspicions. But I cannot understand how he simply put the towel on his neck and walked away and ignored his father and did nothing to try to save his father's life. Nothing. This is a father he supposedly adored. He did nothing. He said he looked into the mother's room. I don't know that he could even tell his mother was dead from that spot. He apparently was able to say what was wrong with her. And they said from where you're standing in the doorway, you can't even see what's wrong with her unless you're standing over her. So the police are also suspicious that he knew too much for a person who was looking from the doorway. So effectively, we've got the two major scenarios. I don't buy the hit. I just do not buy. I think that is complete garbage. I will say it's down to Marty and Jerry, the partner. So to me, Jerry could have done it, and that it could be because they didn't write like this. I mean, they did go talk to him, but maybe it's just that. Oh, the dogs are out now. I've gone over my 2 hours, so my daughter let the dogs out. So I'll finish up fairly soon. Oh, maybe I should tell her, please, the dogs in. I'm still doing the show. Just for a few seconds. Hold on a second. Still doing the show. Still doing show. That is a noisy dog. He's a big dog. It makes a lot of noise. And so now we go. So, okay. So if Jerry didn't leave, got the tire iron, he could have gone in and hit. I don't have a problem that he could have gotten behind him and hit him. That I think is possible. And then he would know Arlene was in the bedroom. He goes and hits her, checks on Marty. Marty's still asleep. Then he goes and gets the knife and makes sure that he thinks they're both dead. Definitely thinks she goes and cuts her neck and she's dead. Goes out there and then cuts his neck. And then it's possible that he had blood on him when he left, and took the weapons, whatever. So they say it wasn't the knife next to the watermelon wasn't the knife, but I don't know. That's true. They didn't find any blood on it, but it could have been washed and could have been placed back on the counter, and maybe even gone through the watermelon one more time and put it on the counter. Or did Jerry come with a knife and the tire iron? So maybe he brought both in. He used the tire iron first, then he used the knife, and it's possible that he could have a sweater on. He could have wrapped everything in the sweater when he walked through the house, so he just wasn't dropping blood every place. And then when he finished cutting his throat, he thought he was dead, and he left. So I can see that, and he went home, and his daughter's lying for him. Although he may have come in, and not that much later, because he was already there. So maybe he came in maybe 30 minutes later, and his daughter's just misremembering or trying to help daddy out, because she thinks, oh, come on, he didn't do anything. He's like, well, I took a long way home, or I stopped to whatever, and they're going to think I did something. Who knows what it could have been. And so if they didn't go right away and check his car, his clothes, his knife, tire iron, they didn't do that, which they didn't. He could have done it, but I think he would have done it alone. I don't think that anybody was with him. Now, that works pretty well for me, except for the problem of him not trying to save his dad and all the lies he told. Not during the confession, but just in general, that he went on and had blood on his hands and touched all these things and opened up to looked in the car, the garage. All that stuff's a lie. Why is he lying about all that stuff? What's the point? That I have a problem with. Now, the reason I brought up the beach issue and when this went down is because if it went down more at the time after everybody left, if it went down only maybe 30 minutes later or an hour later, he had 2 hours to clean up, get rid of weapons. I don't know. I mean, he's a young man. He could have walked a mile away and buried them somewhere in the woods there. There are a lot of woods. He could have buried whatever it was in the woods, just because he says remember, he's got more than one barbell. So maybe they just kind of went in and said, well, that's what I used. And then I used that knife on the counter when he didn't use that knife and used some other knife that they just never found. They also said there was some kind of gloves possibly used in the crime, and they didn't find those either. But that doesn't mean he couldn't have put on weightlifting gloves. They have a kind of a net, which looks like it was like with the one next to his the light switch had a kind of a net. There was a net thing. So they thought it was like a Playtex glove or possibly a weightlifting glove. So he could have used that. He could have put those on his hands before he did anything. And then again, he could have, with all that time on his hands, he could have walked away. He could have used the spigot. He could have used the pool. He could have used the shower. I don't know how much blood he had on him. He could have buried his clothes out in the middle of freaking nowhere. His parents are dead. They can't say his clothes are missing. Maybe he did do it naked. Who knows? But he could have walked, because 2 hours, he's got an extra 2 hours. He could have gone down to the beach, gotten rid of stuff that he could have, maybe didn't go in the shower. Maybe he just went down to the beach and got in the water and washed everything in the water, including himself, and then went in someplace and buried the material. They had 2 hours. And then he finally gets back in the house, and then he finds his father still alive. He's like, crap. Okay, well, if I call now, I'll just say his blood is gushing and I'm trying to save him. Possible. But I think, I'm bothered most by this. He's gushing blood. Did you do that? Did you put pressure on the wound? And he said, I did that. And that had nothing to do with the police pushing him into anything. He said that in 48 hours. You actually claimed that you tried to save your father's life and you didn't. Why are you lying? Why are you lying now? Because it makes you look better? If people don't know the truth? Because in the 48 hours, you'll never find out that he didn't do that. They leave out a lot of information in those shows so that you only hear what they want you to hear. And they're not telling you all those other details, which I found out through the crime reports. And actually, Saul Peter's book had a lot of that in it, so he didn't lie through the whole thing. Just a whole bunch of stuff that didn't ring right to me. So in the long run, do I agree that may have lacked enough information, enough evidence to actually convict him? Maybe yes, but I wasn't in the courtroom. What the courtroom saw, I think, was they believed his demeanor was very psychopathic, cold. Maybe when he explained all of these things in the courtroom, it didn't ring true to them. And they didn't hear of any real good stories about who could have committed the crime, even though Jerry was a good possibility. Definitely was. But I don't know what a lot of information is missing. So if I were in the court, would I have found him guilty? I don't know. I see the point now where it's like, okay, if they go back to court, I get it. I don't know if they can convict him. And is it possible that Jerry committed the crime and he's just an idiot? I guess it's possible. But I have a problem with him not trying to save his dad's life. That's to me, and running around doing all kinds of other pointless stuff instead of saving your dad's life. Maybe he thought that $3 million would be kind of nice to get. Now, they did say he wasn't going to get that till he was like 25, so he had like 6 years to wait. So why would he kill anybody? He said, well, why would I do that? Then I wouldn't get this money. If they didn't find him guilty, if they didn't suspect him, there was a trust fund. It wasn't like he was going to be without money. until he was 25. 25, he's going to get like 80% of $3 million. So he's going to get a lot of money in 6 years. Kind of reminds you of the Menendez brothers. But that didn't mean his father didn't set up a trust for him, so that in case something happened to both of them, they didn't want a 17-year-old to have nothing to go to college on or live on or anything. But maybe he's just sick of his parents. And he knew there was a trust fund. So, hey, if I get rid of my parents now, I get freedom. I got my trust fund. I can do whatever I damn well please. And then when I get to 25, I get all the rest of the cash. That is motive. So just because he says he loved his parents, and some people thought he loved his parents, doesn't mean he did love his parents. So, do I think he's guilty? I can't say he's innocent. And I have the thing, his lies and the fact he didn't try to save his father bother me greatly. So I would lean toward, it's very possible he killed his parents. And so that's just what I see. And that Jerry could have done it. He could have done it, but I don't believe it anyway. There was no hit. So, but again, I don't think they investigated properly to prove Jerry didn't do it. And this, by the way, is a real issue with cases. Jerry, if he didn't do it, it would be nice if he were proven he didn't do it. And if they'd done a more thorough investigation, they did talk to him and stuff, but in a kind of a weird way, because I think they already believed it was him. But they thought they already had the guy they were kind of like half-assed about, doing interviews with Jerry and all that stuff. They just probably didn't believe Jerry did it, so they just didn't put a lot of effort in. I mean, they got his alibi. They did interview him. They went to California when he fled, but I didn't see anything where they did all the testing on his car and everything else. They should have done that, because if nothing else, it would have cleared him. 100% cleared him. And then if 100% cleared him, I'm going to say he did it no matter what. But because it didn't clear him entirely, is it possible he could have committed the crime? Yes. But it doesn't explain away Marty's lack of saving his father's life, or at least trying. All right, I'm going to go to your 500,000 comments. That is it. Okay. Well, he didn't come off well. He was a really kind of arrogant rich kid. So, but I don't know that a lot of people always think that detectives are immediately just disliking somebody, and they get, oh, they're rich and I'm not, and so therefore I just want to put them away. I don't think it's that. I think McCready thought he did it. He may not like McCready, but I think he had issues with the same reasons I have issues with Marty as well. There were things that didn't sit right with him. The demeanor, the stories that he was changing his story while he was right there. He kept changing the story about what happened that morning. And there wasn't much happening in a short period of time that he shouldn't know what he was doing, So I think McCready had good reason to suspect him. I think he did get the confession. I just think he should have done more. And he didn't. That is very weird. There's no question about it, but Jerry was a mess in general. Jerry had tons of problems. So was he running away from everything? Or was he running away because he committed a crime? And they already had him. They already said, the papers already said it was him. So he had no real reason to run, because there was a lot of gossipy stuff that was nasty. And he was saying, oh yeah, Jerry did it. But the police said Marty did it. So I don't think he was running from the police, but his life was a mess. So maybe he had a lot of very emotional guy. So, but it is weird. There's no question. The only claim here is the claim here. Let me see if I can get this straight. Marty did ask for a polygraph, and police just said, we don't need that. And that I think was probably a mistake, but then again, he might have passed it regardless of whether he was innocent or guilty, because again, polygraphs are an investigative tool. They're not proof of anything. So maybe the police weren't willing to do that because they're like, well, we already know he did it. So I'm not saying it's right, but and apparently, I know all the people that supposedly claimed that it was a big hit, that it was a hit and they were all involved, supposedly they passed it. And some woman who said she knew something, she passed it. But they were all giving by saltpeter's saltpeter's, the private investigator, they're all given from his team. So I don't believe anything saltpeter has to say. I tell you the truth. So that's question. I did that. No, it's TV. I did that. Well, did you, I think that the question, I remember the question correctly. It's like, did you give life-saving measures to your father? And he says, I did that. I think that's a perfectly reasonable answer. It's just not true. That's the part that bothers me. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I forgot about the steroid issue. There's so much. I mean, it's one of these things, again, I have a 2-hour show, which has now gone over to 2 hours and a half. Getting all this information. That's why I'm not going through so many details. Well, I've already, gone through so many details, but there's so much. Yes, he supposedly got steroids. Whether that made him aggressive, I don't know. He looks very old for 17. I don't think so. You can buy better. It could be that sociopathic. Why not? If you're psycho, I always say psychopath because I never liked the sociopath word, but they're basically the same thing. They are the same thing. People just make up fancy meanings for both of them. If you're a psychopath, you're a psychopath. Whether you're going to be violent being a psychopath is another question. Now, what you see a lot of times is, like, for example, in the other case that I was explaining to you, that teenager killed his little brother brutally, and now he's a lawyer. He's obviously never done it again. He's guilty as hell. So don't that case, there's no question. He killed his brother, cut his little brother's head off. It was one of those gruesome crime scenes I've ever had to look at. A horrifying crime scene. And his little brother was Abel and he was Cain. His parents adored the little brother way more than they liked the teenager. And the teenager got rid of his little brother so he could get the attention. And he won. He got tons of attention from his parents in the trial and his parents in the prison. And now he's out. And yeah. But what kind of kid, what kind of human being does that to his little brother? Well, it's a psychopath. But now he's an attorney, which may be the perfect field to go into. So there are situational murders and there are serial killers. Situational murders, the psychopath has a reason to commit that one murder. Or maybe 10, 20 years later, he might have a good reason to kill again, like Drew Peterson. But there's situational murderers. Scott Peterson just got tired of being married, didn't want a kid. That's situational. He's not a serial killer. Serial killer gets a pleasure out of the actual act of killing, and he wants to experience that over and over again. That's how he gets his power and control. It's a big thrill to him or to her. And so they do it over and over again. So that's a whole different psyche. For situational killers, they're psychopathic in general ways and in all kinds of other ways. And all their behaviors, they'd probably be able to do check boxes on that. But they, generally speaking, aren't necessarily into killing unless it's necessary. And sometimes it becomes necessary when you don't get what you want. So it goes like that. Are the police allowed to use such tricks? Yes, they are. They are allowed to lie. This is true. It's a trick, and a lot of people question whether. That's why they say you should never answer any questions and get a lawyer. Just say I refuse to speak until I speak to my attorney. I want an attorney present because they can talk to you and they can trick you and make up something that. Like we have evidence when, they told him that his mom had hair in her hand and it was his. That wasn't true. And what's also interesting, and that was one more thing to get him to think, oh my God, they got me. It wasn't true. But what's interesting in all the stuff I read about it, they allude to the fact, and from the defense side and from Saltpeter's book and 48 Hours and places like that, that the hair in her hand belonged to an unknown person. Well, that's not true. It was her hair. And most of the time when you have hair in a person who's being killed, the hair is usually the victim's hair, almost always. So, but they did lie to him about that too. And there's a whole bunch of things. We know these things to be true already. We have your fingerprints, or we have your DNA. They can do all that stuff. So checking something. Oh, that's Bamber, who is guilty as hell. And you can check out my put in profiler Pat Brown and Bamber in the and Bain, Bain. I did both of them. Put that in the search engine at YouTube, and I did a thing on Bain and Bamber, who I think are both guilty. And Frida says, funnily enough, Bamber also talked about his plans before offing his parents, including what he'd spend the cash on. Yeah, because you're thinking toward the future. What would you like your future to be like? And he was obviously including a feature without his parents, because he said, if my parents weren't here, I can't even imagine saying that. My parents weren't here. My parents were dead. I would do this. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to kill them, but it does mean you're thinking about life without them. So it's interesting. Yeah. This is Frida, correct. When you're hitting people with a long piece of steel, you can't reach the person who's hitting you. So I don't think that's another thing. I don't think he had to necessarily have marks on, because yes, if he's beating them like this with a pole, the most you're going to do is like, you might try to do this. You might try to grab the pole if you could, but usually if you hit hard enough on the first hit, you're not really in the mood to try to do too much, except for maybe you're blurry and doing this. Yeah. So he may have no marks on him. Then again, we don't know that Jerry had marks on him because nobody checked with that. I don't know. Maybe there may be more information out there in the actual police reports, which I don't have access to. So therefore, there might be more on Jerry that proves that he did not do it, which is why they just said, yeah, it's not him. More than his daughter's supposed alibi for him. I don't know. Maybe they did check stuff, but I can't find it because, again, most things are presented by the defense. And if there's anything that the defense doesn't want you to know, it's going to be left out of whatever show it is or whatever book it is. So, yeah. So I didn't find anything. If you find anything about, I need a checking of Jerry's car or his house or anything, clothing, let me know. In general, when crimes get too complicated, crimes aren't necessarily complicated. It's just that we don't know we just don't know what happened. That's really what it comes down to unless you have some really unusual, like high level, jewel thief or something who goes through all kinds of machinations to create this incredible methodology. For the most part, crimes aren't that brilliant. It's just that a lot of times it's not as easy to get evidence as you think in some crimes. And just because you say, well, we checked the shower and there was nothing in the drains, well, maybe it just, the water worked. You know what I mean? It just, sometimes things work. And that's why sometimes when you have, for example, firefighters come and they spray the whole scene down, or the body's left out in the rain, or the body's in a river, sometimes a lot of evidence just goes missing. You just don't have it because the water does do a great job. Now, other times, depending on, like sometimes there will be a case where there's DNA still inside a body, in a rape case, where even though the body's been out in the elements, sometimes you can find a body years later and there's evidence, DNA evidence stuff. It's pretty cool, but it doesn't always happen. And so people always expect it, that there has to be a ton of, let's put it this way. They complain about there's no blood going back down the hallway. Well, whoever the hell killed them didn't leave any blood. I don't care who did it. Now, where's the blood? Now, these guys that are smashing up the place, this team running around. Oh, and one of the guys supposedly forgot the pipe he had with him, so he had to go back into the house. He's got blood all over him because they're supposedly just they're like going crazy. And now why don't we see footprints going out to the car, or blood on the doors and like that. Where is all that? So I don't see two crazed people in there. I see somebody more methodical and in control, whatever reasons, and somebody who wasn't rushing as much as all that. And so I don't know. It's a very interesting case, but not trying to save your father is really questionable. Could it be that his position was striking blows? Yes. It's very possible. And it's also possible that he didn't wear any clothes. Maybe he's telling the truth on that. He was naked, and he was figuring he was just going to slip through the house. Now, I think that his mother, well, and of course, when he says naked, could he have had underwear on? Maybe the underwear was the only part that he had on. So he put on a little something, before he went, because otherwise running, doing things, you really don't want to be flapping around, so maybe he had some underwear on, and he's just not, threw that on, but he didn't put anything else on. He figured, that way all my nice clothes won't get hurt, won't get full of blood. And if I do get any blood on me, it'll be just on my underwear, and that'll be easy to get rid of. Again, I think if he committed the crime, he probably did it right about maybe 4:00, maybe 4:30, somewhere in that little part of the night. And he had at least a couple hours to get rid of, to all of getting rid of everything, washing up, taking a shower, going outside to the spigot, going down to the water, all kinds of places, and burying stuff out in the woods a mile away. Who knows? And, if he did it right then, he wouldn't have much time to get rid of anything. So I think that whoever did it earlier in the night. Well, if Jerry did it, then he would have taken the objects with him, his clothing, and the weapons, and got in his vehicle and drove away. But I just like to know whether I missed something on them testing his vehicle and all that stuff, just to make sure there was no blood in there. But don't know. He wouldn't have slept through it. It's kind of hard to imagine, especially because he's across from his mother's. And when somebody went in to kill mommy, they probably left I don't know, but they shut the door behind them so that the sound wouldn't travel. I mean, would they think of that at that point? Now, killing the father, nobody would hear that from the other end of the house. Killing the mother, he would hear that, you would think. But they did some tests on that, and they said it wasn't that easy to hear. Maybe he's a heavy sleeper. Maybe he put pillows over his hip. I don't know. So I think it's possible that he could not have heard it. So let's see if there's any more comments before I go get some food, because now I'm really hungry. Okay. Last question. If he had a lawyer present, do you think he would have been found innocent? I think he wouldn't have confessed. I think they would have been suspicious because of everything he said prior to that, and then the fact he didn't try to save Daddy. But I think the lawyer would have been right there saying, "Don't say anything," and he wouldn't have confessed. So they wouldn't have been able to use the confession in court, which they did. And he took the stand, and it did not go well for him because the jury found him cold, very cold. So yeah, they basically convicted him mostly on the confession because they didn't have physical evidence linking him to the crime. Just strange things, like I said, no blood on the phones, no blood on the handle of the garage. Him not trying to save his father. There were strange things. Him not hearing anything. Him going from dying father all the way to the other end of the house, and all of his statements and the conflicting statements that he made, where he changed things. Those are suspicious, but without the confession, I don't think he would have been found guilty. So his confession did him in. There's no question about it. So, yeah. So yeah, if he had a lawyer there, probably he wouldn't have been in prison. But now he's out. Lady Jane, thanks for a fantastic show, Pat. I really enjoy hearing your point of view on all sides. Thank you. Well, it's very, very interesting. And I said, I can't 100% say I know who did it, but I say my red flag is you didn't try to save Daddy. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. And again, if you're new to the show, please do like and subscribe. And I will see some of you at the Hangout this week. Probably be Thursday night at 7 p.m., I think. Yeah, probably. So hopefully I'll see you then. Bye.